Kicking off the list at number 10, The Man of Steel, Superman. Superman Batman Volume 1, Issue 44. The Strange Favor storyline begins with a movie shoot. How exciting, I wonder what they're filming. Well, they're filming a Superman Batman movie called World's Finest, which has a pretty good ring to it. I'm already intrigued. It feels like Tropic Thunder almost at first. These other guys are playing these superheroes. Batman's being played by a former Bond actor in that universe, Jason Wish, and he's going for it. His eyes are all watery. He's explaining this made-up origin, and Superman offside, like the Superman and the Batman, are watching them film from afar, and Batman isn't really into this whole idea. He doesn't like how they don't know his true story, and now they're just making stuff up. But Superman reassures them that it's only because they're interested in the mysterious bat. Out of nowhere, Livewire comes in, who's almost as evil as LimeWire. Almost. And then she takes Jason as hostage, demanding that she receives half of his $12 million pay, which is a pretty big chunk of money. Robert Pattinson's only getting $5 million for the next Batman, but he's getting 20 for Batman 2, so it's okay. So the Superman flies down and intervenes, and then he gets surprised when the prop kryptonite on set gets blasted with electricity and in turn explodes, leaving pieces of Superman's only weakness stuck in his face. I love how they have real kryptonite on set. That's good, that's commitment. It's like when they use real bones instead of props in the original Poltergeist movie. What could possibly go wrong, right? Number 9, The Wasp. We'll get the appetite going right off the bat here. Okay, Janet Van Dyne, aka the Wasp, first appeared in comics in Tales to Astonish, issue 44. Genetically engineered by Dr. Hank Pym, Ant-Man, with the help of Pym particles and biosynthetic wings, now Janet was one of the founding members of the Avengers. Not too shabby. She could generate bioelectric blasts from her hand, knocking down even the fiercest of foes. But when the Blob gets a hold of her in the Ultimatum storyline, her sting just wouldn't cut it. The story comes from the Ultimates, which is already just a darker take on all of our characters and all those stories, and in it we see Earth's mightiest meeting their violent end. As for the Wasp, during the flood in New York City, she ended up being separated from the team, and when they finally found her, it was too late. She had become a midnight snack. Hank decides to get payback in a similar manner. Giant Man then grabs the Blob and Ozzy Osbourne's his head right off. Payback is gross, but necessary. And before we continue on with this list, let's brighten the mood a little bit. Maybe go and hit that thumbs up. I don't know, get some spirits back to normal. Also, it helps the channel out so much. You're the best. Thank you so much. Back to this dark list. Number 8, Batman. Coming from the 1993 Batman Nightfall storyline, we get to meet Bane in a terrifying way. He literally broke Batman. The Beast started by making Batman's worst day come to life as he freed every villain in Arkham Asylum, so now Batman's gotta try and round up all those psychopaths, which is already exhausting, and Batman's weaker now, mentally and physically. And when Bane goes to the Batcave because yes, he knows Batman's secret identity, he beats Bruce down, and when the moment is right, he lifts the Caped Crusader above his head and drops him down onto his knee, breaking his back. Now this was a huge moment in the comics. When Batman goes down for the count, the mantle was then passed along to Azrael. And we just broke down a bunch of alternate versions of Batman in the last week or two, so make sure you go and check out one of those 3 lists as well after you're done here. Batman has had quite the run in comics. Interesting time. Number 7, Spider-Man. Coming in hot from the Amazing Spider-Man 700.3, The Black Lodge Part 1. We open in Queens, New York. It's past 2 in the morning. Peter is regretting having seconds at Aunt May's. He's just trying to go home, but now he's got to go face to face with Firebrand. Peter even realizes that already this fight has gone on for too long. Usually this would be a piece of cake, but Peter ate too much cake. He was actually too full. He was tired. Now this is tedious. And then when Firebrand gets a hold of Peter's neck, it really starts to hurt. Firebrand unloads everything that he has, and then he sees Peter's suit start to melt and then rip apart. It's actually really brutal and pretty gory. By the time help arrives, he's unrecognizable. The cleanup crew literally thinks he's another supervillain. They're like, get him out of here, this burnt, crispy man. Firebrand 2.0, whoever you are, bye. Peter received 3rd-degree burns on 80% of his body. Aunt May, where's the aloe? We need some aloe stat. Number 6, the Hulk. Mark Millar's Old Man Logan begins in Volume 3 of Wolverine at issue 66, and this is now a future where supervillains have won. Sads. Hulk and She-Hulk had kids. Weird. The Hulklings, who would beat the crap out of you if you didn't pay rent, because basically everybody had their own territory, so Logan had to pay up. Hawkeye, who is also much older and now also blind, needed Logan's assistance to get across the country and deliver a secret package. This was a way Logan could make some of that rent money, so perfect, let's do it. Now when they get back from their trip, things have progressed in an awful way. Hulk Gang took out Logan's entire family because Well, they were bored, of course. They're a little messed up in the head if you didn't already piece that together. So Logan dishes out some payback. No more games, no more talking. Logan's here to now get this done. Logan gets Banner right through the old chest plate, but we all know what happens next. He freaks out. He hulks out, rather, and then he eats Logan. If you can't beat him, eat him, I guess. Now you'd think this would for sure be the end of it, but that's when Logan pops out from inside Banner. After what's gonna happen to Wolverine near the end of this list, it's nice to see him come out on top, or just come out of a body in general, that's fun. Number 5, Jason Todd. Of course this is going to be on the list. A Death in the Family is a 4-part storyline written by Jim Starlin and published in 1988. It contains perhaps one of the biggest, darkest moments in DC Comics history because we see the Joker beat the second Robin, Jason Todd. And when I say beat him, I mean he beat him with a crowbar and then used an explosive for good measure. He was a goner, for sure. And also, it was your parents' fault. Pause this video, go yell at them, come back, like it, click play. Yeah, DC left it up to readers how this story ends for Robin. Nowadays, fans are coming together on Twitter to see director cuts of movies that haven't even been released yet. So it's a little better now. We have a bit more of a squad. The actual beatdown, of course, is awful, but emotionally the Joker destroys the Boy Wonder as well. He used Jason Todd's birth mother, he blackmailed her in order to get closer to Jason, and it worked. Betrayed by his birth mother, and then the Joker too killed her. Double whammy, triple whammy. 4 whammies, I don't know, all the whammies. Number 4, Green Arrow. Green Lantern, Green Arrow, issue 85. Let's talk about it. The first few pages, we see Oliver Queen walking at night trying to get home when all of a sudden some punks, some fools try and rob him. Now this is a day in the park for most of our superheroes. Now it's not like he was tired or maybe he didn't see it coming like Peter, he ate too much cake. He actually was in a bad mood. He had lady troubles, he was ready to fight. He was like, okay, I'm looking for this. You guys picked the wrong guy, let's go. He's like getting warmed up. He was feeling good. And then a guy pulled out a crossbow, because you know, all those thugs that carry crossbows through the city, and then Ollie gets shot right through the shoulder with an arrow. Irony at its finest. Number 3, Green Lantern. Now this one comes from Justice League issue 5. It's been referred to as the Punch since. In this comic, Batman comes in to take over the Justice League International, and Guy Gardner, Green Lantern, doesn't share the same enthusiasm as the rest of the team. For more than one issue, he makes it very clear that he doesn't like this new leader. So naturally, this conflict was growing, and although Batman was obviously a better fit for the role, he challenged Batman to a fight without the use of his power ring, and then Batman proceeded to knock him out with one punch. Of course, he's Batman, and without the ring, you're just a guy. You're just a regular Guy Gardner. Blue Beetle even jumped up. He got pumped, and he started yelling, one punch, one punch, one punch, just adding insult to injury, literally. This is a great moment, an even greater lesson, but Green Lantern getting knocked out by a human punch shouldn't have happened in the first place. Don't start fights you can't win without the only thing that makes you win those fights. I don't know, just my advice. Number 2, Martian Manhunter. In Final Crisis 1, John Jones' Martian Manhunter gets trapped in a prison. See, he originally went there undercover as John Jones in his human form and would regularly report back to Batman. That's when the villains decided to break free and then he was left behind. It's not looking good at this point, because Human Flame had now given the villain Libra instructions to kill Martian Manhunter. So Libra went and he did so. He stabbed Martian Manhunter with a staff right in front of the entire staff, the entire secret society of supervillains, and then upon his death he returned back to his Martian form, and in his final moments he still managed to send that message back to the Justice League. Not even death will stop this guy's plans. The Justice League held his funeral on his home planet, Mars, with Superman giving the eulogy. His final moments were expanded on in the Final Crisis Requiem storyline, teaching us more about his homeworld and the inhabitants of it. You can find this in Justice League Volume 2 in issues 6 and 7. And finally, number 1, my personal favorite, Wolverine. I mentioned Wolverine getting something bad. This is it. Now we're going to talk about it. This next one comes from Punisher Volume 6, Issue 17, appropriately titled Aim Low, written by Garth Ennis. So we find Wolverine with his face, well, without a face. His face is gone at this point. He got his face blown off by the Punisher, and you'd think that would be pretty bad, but it of course gets so much worse. Frank Castle fixes his aim a little bit lower and then pulls the trigger, reassuring Logan that they'll grow back. Frank was trying to get Wolverine out of the way, and this put him down for a bit, definitely, but he's still not out for the count just yet. Never turn your back on the knucklehead. Wolverine is literally crawling towards the Punisher now. He's like, shoot me, bomb me, cut me up, I don't care, I'm just gonna keep coming at you. Well, it's kind of hard to move when there's a steamroller on top of you, no? The fact that he did it slowly too, starting with the feet and then slowly moving it up to his head and then putting it in park when it was on his head, I can't even fathom what this would feel like. I can't pull a hangnail some days. Like a steamroller, what kind of Austin Powers way to go out is that?
Coming in number 10, we've got The Thing. The beefiest, brawniest, burliest, surliest member of the Fantastic Four doesn't often lose in a battle of might. Wits could be another thing, and when it comes to speed and timing, things could end poorly too. But on most days, there isn't going to be anyone stronger than Benjamin Grimm. After being hit with some wild cosmic rays, his body underwent some crazy changes. His skin became rough and rock-like, taking on an orangey hue and becoming near impenetrable. His toughness and density are through the roof, making him very hard to hurt. Along with his inbuilt armor, he also has a whole lot of additional wicked physical traits. Based on strength alone, he's one of the most powerful characters going. In fact, most consider him a consistent and classic rival to the Hulk. Incredible stamina, durability, and sensory adaptation round out his legendary bulk, and he technically is immortal if he chose not to revert to his human form every year. He doesn't age, can't really get hurt, and packs quite a wallop. In fact, after standing toe-to-toe with the mighty Green Mutant many times, the Thing has indeed definitively won against the Hulk before. So how does he manage to lose a fight? Well, you can't win them all. When the Hulk heads to New York to get revenge on the Avengers, the Fantastic Four is waiting for him. Ben Grimm hops out in front and takes on the Hulk, and the battle is pretty evenly matched. However, at the end of the massively destructive fight, the Hulk reigns supreme. The Thing collapses, totally wiped, and the Hulk is able to move right along. Dang, and we thought that incredible stamina would go on forever. Maybe next time, right? Coming in number 9, we've got Mark Grayson. This one's a bit of a bummer, don't you think? A burgeoning young hero getting his ass beat by his own father. The father that seemed to promise to protect the Earth from any threat? Such is the life of a Viltrumite. Mark Grayson, aka Invincible, was just getting a handle on his powers. He'd realized how strong he truly could be, but his dad, Omni-Man, was definitely stronger. But that's not too big a deal, right? Papa Nolan is gonna stick around and defend the Earth too, yeah? Teach Mark the ways of being a hero, maybe hit some sweet dance moves to a song called Hot Milk. Wrong. Omni-Man is actually evil and looking to conquer as many planets as possible. Damn, dude. When Mark attempts to stop him after he kills a plethora of supers, Omni-Man lays an absolute beatdown on his son. It is super brutal, my goodness. Coming in number 8, we've got John Stewart. One of Earth's Green Lanterns, John Stewart is blessed with all the powers one would expect. As leader of the Green Lantern Corps and a member of its honor guard, he's quite the formidable fighter. Renowned for his sharpshooting and building skills, not many can hold a candle to this hero. However, he isn't perfect, and all of the powers in the world won't help you if you get too cocky. The classic tale of human hubris. Nobody's immune to it, no way. While working with Martian Manhunter to contain the anti-life equation, they realized they'd need to save the planet of Xanshi. The folks there were slowly being poisoned, and to make matters worse, the planet was laden with bombs that were set to blow. John, thinking that he was super powerful and unstoppable, decided to fly an injured Martian Manhunter to safety before heading down solo. Guess what though? The bombs were yellow. You know, the one color that renders a Green Lantern useless. So all he could do was get the hell out of Dodge, leaving Xanshi to an explosive doom. Damn. Coming in number 7, we've got Nightcrawler. Most folks like living life without a gaping hole in their chest, but most folks also can't teleport around in the blink of an eye. It's a tough world for a teleporting superhero, especially one with a drive to help as many people as possible. Nightcrawler, being a genuine hero, puts his life on the line and pays the price. In a future where there are no more mutants thanks to a lovely spell cast by Scarlet Witch, only one hope remains. Incidentally, this hope comes in the form of a mutant girl named Hope. Subtle. When Bastion, a super advanced sentinel from the future, comes back to kill Hope, Nightcrawler gets in his way. Unfortunately, in the way also means that the Sentinel's arm is right through Nightcrawler's chest. Oops. In a last-ditch effort to keep Hope alive, Nightcrawler uses all of his strength to teleport her away from the murderous machine. Once he completes that task, he runs out of fuel and dies. Coming in number 6, we've got Eric O'Grady, and this one is painful. Eric O'Grady, one of the least lovable Ant-Men, lived his life like a bit of a loser. However, he was still indeed Ant-Man, with all of the powers that came along with the title. Plenty of potential there, that's for sure. And even though he was no saint in life, he was definitely a hero in death. Somehow a child fell into the clutches of the Descendants, a group of artificially intelligent super cyborgs. They may look human and act human, but they definitely aren't. And this is proven when they delve deep into the depths of cruelty and stomp poor Eric to death. He saved the kid, but was unable to come away with his own life. Ouch. After being reduced to a bloody pulp, the cyborgs also took his likeness and created a new Ant-Man, one that would infiltrate his old team and betray them at a critical junction. Coming in number 5, we've got Shazam. What? Shazam? The closest thing to Superman we've got without getting Superman. Who's gonna beat him in a fight? I suppose you can't necessarily count on him to be at 100% mental fortitude though, considering that underneath all of that ancient magic and musculature, there is a 15-year-old with a strong heart. There's a lot that goes on in a teenager's brain that might cause him to make some bad decisions, you know? Like in the case of Shazam versus Harley Quinn, for example. Quinn tosses a hammer at Shazam, who seems to think it's gonna be an easy fight. He has the strength and reflexes to deal with that hammer no problem. But here's the thing, he keeps talking to Quinn after he catches the hammer and doesn't really do anything with the wayward weapon. So what happens next? The hammer explodes. Oh boy. Shazam, you could've won the fight, but you didn't. Coming in number 4, we've got Iron Man. Oh Tony, if only you were better at getting along with people. All throughout Iron Man's history, Tony Stark has been a bit insufferable. Although he's a super genius with a heart of, well, maybe not gold, but something like it, he tends to rub people the wrong way. So even if he manages to defeat plenty of supervillains and keep the world safe, he's still got some other stuff to contend with. From time to time, he'll do something that really makes another hero mad, and that hero might decide to fight Iron Man. And in a lot of these cases, Iron Man doesn't fare all that well. Like, he's lost to pretty much every mainline Avenger at some point, from Spider-Man to the Hulk to Thor to even Black Widow. It's tough when you paint such a big target on your back, but I'm sure he understands. Coming in number 3, we've got Jean Grey. To be immensely powerful. Too bad the world isn't fair and something can always go wrong. Take Jean Grey for example. Telekinetic and telepathic powers beyond compare, a connection with the powerful cosmic entity the Phoenix, a bunch of awesome mutant pals. What could be better? Well, not experiencing a terrifying magnetic aneurysm, I guess. Yeah, that did not turn out too well for poor Jean Grey. After discovering that their new member Zorn was actually Magneto in disguise, the X-Men jumped into action. This did not prevent Magneto from releasing an insane wave of magnetic energy, absolutely wrecking Jean's brain though. Unfortunately, there was nothing she could do about it and she perished almost instantly. Yikes. Coming in number 2, we've got Captain America. Now the tables have turned a little. We talked about Iron Man having a tough time stacking up against his longtime pals a little earlier, now is his time to shine. In Civil War, we see Captain America and Iron Man get into a bit of a kerfuffle, and by bit of a kerfuffle I do mean brutal brawl with all sorts of stuff on the line. It's a crazy fight with plenty of killer moments and momentum swings, but in the end, Tony Stark comes out on top. Damn, Cap. And finally at number 1, we've got Silver Surfer. Not the power cosmic. That's absolutely wild. This Herald of Galactus is one of the most powerful ones going, and has strength beyond compare. He can harness immense energy from the universe and channel it in different ways. On most days, barring insane divine intervention or other heroes becoming ludicrously overpowered, he's unstoppable, a force to be reckoned with. However, there have been entities that fought with Silver Surfer and came out on top. Doesn't happen often, but it isn't totally impossible. There's the wild bit from Marvel Zombies that sees this cosmic power get taken down, and there are even a few non-zombie runs where he's taken down a peg. Adam Warlock knocked him out to prevent Silver Surfer from joining a fight against Thanos. Oh, and at some point Deadpool gained the powers granted to Heralds of Galactus too, which was very interesting. Made for a good fight, that's for sure. So even the most powerful beings can be defeated from time to time, eh?
Number 10. Darkseid is called. In the Snyder cut of the DCEU film Justice League, we learn that the heroes don't actually save the day. In the original version of the tale, they kinda lose and are too late to prevent the Mother Box from calling out to Darkseid, who arrives on Earth. The Mother Box explodes, seemingly killing our heroes. However, there is one hope left. While technically in this timeline they lose, Barry Allen, aka The Flash, manages to use his superpowers to race beyond the speed of light, turning back time and giving everyone a second chance. Also showcasing how much of a powerhouse the hero can be and making him one of the most powerful superheroes on the team in this version of the story. So although for a moment they lost, The Flash gives the team a second chance, and this time they do manage to save the day, with Cyborg preventing the Mother Boxes from coming together and reaching out across the cosmos with Superman's help, and Aquaman and Wonder Woman defeating Steppenwolf, who dies while being sent back through the portal to Darkseid on Apocalypse. But that first time around, they all likely died. Number 9. Captain Britain vs. Iska. The Ten of Swords tournament, or the Otherworld tournament, was not what many expected, especially when it came to how poorly our friends over on Krakoa did. I mean, after all, they were supposed to be the heroes in this event, as they faced off against their villainous mutant brethren of Arakko, who were also under the influence of the Amenthi demons led by Annihilation. And it all started with Krakoa's ability to lose hard on that very first battle in this story. I don't know about you, but I was pretty shook after reading that first fight when I was reading this as it was all coming out. The fight went down between Captain Britain, Betsy Braddock, representing Krakoa, and Iska the Unbeaten, a champion of Arakko. The fight lasted 4 pages, and Betsy was swiftly and easily defeated by Iska, with both her sword and herself being shattered into pieces. And friends, before I move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to show some support for us over on another platform, head on over to Facebook where you can give us a like, a follow. We really appreciate it when you do, and we have lots of exclusive content coming your way over there, so yes. Number 8. A League of One. Superheroes don't always lose to supervillains in the comics. In the case of the JLA story A League of One, this time around the League is actually defeated by one of their own, Wonder Woman. However, Wonder Woman doesn't do this to actually cause them harm or kill them, but simply to get them out of the way. This is because the League is facing a dragon, and there's basically a prophecy surrounding that fight that it will cost the band of heroes their lives. Wonder Woman not only manages to defeat the League, even disposing of Superman, who she weakens and then sends on a mission to save the others who she's left in danger, but also does manage to sidestep her doomed fate. Sort of. Wonder Woman was willing to die in the League's place, hoping to spare the rest of the team, but in taking on the dragon by herself, she manages to actually avoid dying. At least dying permanently. She dies momentarily, but is revived by Superman, who arrives just in time to bring her back from the brink of death by giving her life-saving CPR. So she died, but only for a minute. Number 7. Emperor Doom. In this story, Dr. Doom succeeds in taking over the world by using the powers of the Purple Man, who he keeps as his prisoner. This might sound like a lot to put on Purple Man, aka Zebediah Killgrave, whose powers aren't generally depicted as being capable of working on a global scale. However, Doom manages to boost Purple Man's power while also taking it for himself by trapping him within a large psychoprism prison. Surprisingly, Earth actually does pretty well under the rule of Doom. Hunger, crime, and war are pretty much all eradicated under his rule, but at the high cost, of course, of free will of every individual on the planet. In the end, Doom isn't defeated, but actually chooses to relinquish control, becoming bored of the monotony of ruling without any opposition. Number 6. Tower of Babel. In the Tower of Babel event, Ra's al Ghul manages to use Batman's own intel and files on the Justice League to defeat them. No. Really. Batman, being the prepared and paranoid man that he is, basically is revealed to have kept files on each member of the Justice League, noting their weaknesses and also containing contingency plans for how to best defeat them should they ever turn to the side of evil. Ross gains access to Batman's systems and is able to retrieve these detailed files and plans via his daughter Talia. He uses this information to take on and defeat all members of the Justice League, even managing to seemingly distract Batman by robbing the graves of his parents. In the end, the Justice League recover and win the day, but they are none too pleased with Batman, whose secret intel in essence almost single-handedly allowed Al Ghul to destroy the whole team. Number 5. Days of Future Past. In the Days of Future Past reality, Sentinels rule over North America. Here, many mutants are eliminated with only a few managing to survive, but still with many of them being kept in camps where they are worked until they die and are branded with an M tattoo on their face, so they will forever be recognized as a lowly mutant, unable to escape prosecution. Even many superheroes have been killed in this reality of Earth 811 because they attempted to protect mutants and put a stop on the Sentinels' reign, which also made them targets. One of the main reasons why the Sentinels are successful in taking over in this story is because of the deaths of Senator Robert Kelly, Professor Charles Xavier, and Moira McTaggart, who were all killed by the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Number 4. Death of the Justice League. The Death of the Justice League has kicked off as of issue 75 of the current Justice League series, which started back in 2018, and wow, it is rough. What happens to the Justice League? Well, they face off against Pariah, who himself is from one of the first worlds to be targeted during the events of Crisis on Infinite Earths. He was cursed with basically watching all these worlds die again and again, unable to stop it, despite being one of the first people to warn everyone that Crisis on Infinite Earths was coming. Now, with the multiverse reset following the events of Death Metal, Pariah claims that he sees the signs of the crisis happening again. Desperate to prevent this, his plan is to wipe the slate clean when it comes to the heroes, so that the possible new anti-monitor who will come into existence will have no reason to continue with the crisis. Seems like some flawed logic to me, but this man has also seen some so I understand his desperation to do whatever he thinks will work when it comes to avoiding another crisis. Number 3. Age of Apocalypse. While the Age of Apocalypse does eventually end, this reality is based on the whole idea of what the world would be like if the big bad villain won, and by big bad villain, we of course mean Apocalypse this time around. Which is precisely what happens here. These events are actually all set into motion by Legion, who accidentally causes the death of his father, Professor X. Legion traveled back in time with a plan to kill Magneto, but Professor X shields Magneto against Legion's attack, dying instead in his place. Apocalypse ends up attempting to take over the world earlier on in his timeline in this universe, the AOA reality of Earth 295. Magneto is the only one who attempts to oppose Apocalypse, and as such, Instability is mainly successful in his attempt for world domination. Apocalypse would oppress humanity, seeing superpowered beings as superior, and it would be many years before his reign of terror was ended. Number 2. Final Crisis. Which actually apparently wasn't so final, as we have another crisis headed our way now, known as Dark Crisis. But regardless of whether or not it was actually final, Final Crisis was definitely a bad time for Earth. In this story, Darkseid actually succeeds in obtaining and releasing the anti-life equation on Earth. He puts it on the internet where it can be easily seen and then spread. Those who see it basically lose their will to live, becoming enslaved to Darkseid and his will, instead of having their own. Well, in the end, the heroes do manage to break free from the influence of Darkseid and the anti-life equation, defeating Darkseid in the end with a radion bullet. Darkseid still manages to enslave all of Earth and many of its heroes, for a time being seen as the victor. Number 1. Life 9 of Moira X. Well, this life in the end seemingly gave mutants the information needed to beat the rise of the Sentinels and of AI, it also was a world where they had lost much. If anything, it actually set the stage for the reset of Moira's 10th life, where mutants supposedly won. However, even that victory would be revealed to be more complicated, as Moira's true motives were revealed during the events of the 2021 Inferno series, and it turns out her motives were actually to kinda end mutant kind in a nicer way. Still, just taking this world and this continuity as it is, the mutants here have almost all been exterminated. In this life, Moira joined forces with Apocalypse in an attempt to make a final stand against the all-powerful Nimrod. They would not be successful in killing Nimrod, who had killed so many mutants and had also worked to oppress the humans as well. They would only manage to retrieve the information on how and when the Nimrod came to be, allowing them to succeed, hopefully, in Moira's 10th life, where she and mutant kind had failed in her 9th. However, we also know that that didn't really work out because Nimrod does exist in her 10th life, so basically are the mutants kinda screwed? I think maybe they are. Number 10. Iris West is killed by Professor Zoom. That's right, Professor Zoom actually succeeded at one point in killing the love of Barry Allen's life, Iris West. Eobard Thawne, how dare you? And it would only be fixed by a continuity reset basically. Well, and prior to that, Barry Allen basically dipping from his own reality to go live in the future of the 30th century with an alternate future version of Iris, who was kinda made to just exist for him having been reborn there, so it's kinda like his Iris but also not, if that makes sense. And if it doesn't, I mean, fair enough, it's pretty confusing. Iris died after Barry and Iris were married, and after she knew about his secret identity. Professor Zoom, as he was known then, ended up simply finding Iris at a party and phasing his hand through her head to kill her instantly. This loss hurt Barry so much that later on, when he found love with Fiona Webb, who he was engaged to marry, when Professor Zoom attacked them on their wedding day, Barry could not take it and responded by killing the villain. It was after this and a following trial for Barry Allen, where he was actually charged with manslaughter because, you know, he killed Thawne, that Barry left the main reality to go be happy with the Iris of the 30th century. Although that would all get wiped away following the events of Crisis on Infinite Earths, but anyways, ain't that just how it goes when crises come a-knockin'. Number 9. Sisterhood of Mutants. In case you were wondering what was going on in the thumbnail from our previous top 10 times superheroes lost list, I'm here to answer that for you now. What's going on there is Lady Mastermind is in essence keeping Emma Frost trapped in kind of like an illusion, so Emma's like trapped in her own mind. Don't worry though, the White Queen's defeat would only be temporary. This was during the creation of the villainous mutant team known as the Sisterhood of Mutants. Mutants. Yeah, you might know about the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, but did you know there is a sisterhood too? It was led by none other than the Goblin Queen herself, Madeline Pryor, who had a plan for how to deal with everyone as she invaded the X-Men's headquarters. Her plan for Emma was for Lady Mastermind to keep Frost trapped within her own mind by using illusions. This, by the way, is also at a time where Emma Frost is actually one of the good guys, not the bad guys, just to be clear. However, Emma would ultimately fight back against Lady Mastermind and find a way out of this when she surprised Mastermind with her new secondary mutation, her diamond form, which makes her immune to any kind of psionic attack. Emma also kicked butt in her diamond form, landing blows that knocked Lady Mastermind into next week. Yeah, I would not want to be hit by a diamond form Emma Frost. That would hurt a lot. Diamonds are really painful, I'm sure, to be punched with. I mean, I assume a lot of things are, but diamonds especially. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want another list where we talk about the times the superheroes lost, honestly, I didn't think I was going to be able to come up with many of them, but the more I do these lists, the more things come into my mind about all of the times superheroes have lost. So let me know in the comments, and maybe we'll do a part 3. Number 8, Dark Avengers. Sometimes heroes lose, not when villains win against them, but just when villains win in general. That was in essence the case with what happened when it came to the creation of the Dark Avengers. The Dark Avengers were the team of Norman Osborn, who probably just called them, you know, Avengers. No dark implications from his side. That would be pretty suspicious if it's like, hey guys, look at my team, these are the Dark Avengers. Don't worry, they're totally great people and none of them are villains. Don't worry about it. Seems a little suspect. Their editorial name though was definitely the Dark Avengers from a reader's standpoint, so that's how we know them. This team of villains marketed as heroes came to be after Osborn was given the reins to create his own organization after the fall of S.H.I.E.L.D. Why Norman Osborn, formerly known as Major Villain Green Goblin? Because at the time, he was being celebrated as a hero after defeating Queen Veronki, leader of the Skrull Secret Invasion on live television broadcast. Norman created his own organization known as Hammer, which was an acronym that he just liked. It actually doesn't even stand for anything. He was just like, I like the name Hammer, make that make sense, let's not worry about it. He also created his own evil Avengers team known as the Dark Avengers during a period referred to as Dark Reign. So if you want to go check it out, you can look up Dark Avengers, you can look up Dark Reign, you can read some cool stuff. Number 7, Death of Green Arrow. Ollie has died a few times, but one of the most iconic deaths of Green Arrow, I would say, comes from the late 80s to 90s series of Green Arrow. Here in issues number 100 to 101, while Oliver Queen was working to infiltrate a team of eco-terrorists, he finds himself tangled up in one of their plots, and is one of the few people who can basically stop a bomb from going off and destroying Metropolis. Well, he can stop it going off in Metropolis, I should say. You can't necessarily stop it from going off, unfortunately. He ends up getting his arm stuck in the detonation chamber and is unable to remove it without the bomb going off. Superman shows up and somehow this ends up being a problem even Superman can't solve. Superman! In the end, Green Arrow chooses to sacrifice himself to protect the people of Metropolis rather than still save the people of Metropolis, but instead just lose his arm instead of, losing his whole life. I mean, okay. I personally just think DC really wanted to kill Oliver Queen for some reason at this point, because I think Superman had some plans prior to Ollie making the bomb go boom that could have, maybe worked. Bomb 1, Queen 0, I guess. Number 6, Death of Thor. You could say the death of Thor is basically inevitable. When it comes to the world of the Norse gods of Asgard, many of their demises are ruled by prophetic fate. Thor is no exception. We learn this in his fight against his uncle, Kulborson, the Serpent, in Fear Itself. During the Fear Itself event, Kulborson escapes from his prison and rises again. The condemned and long imprisoned brother of Odin once more rises to power by feeding on the fear of the people of Earth, naming his own champions who are each gifted a hammer. Thor in turn is destined to battle his uncle and in so doing unfortunately die. Despite Odin's protests at his son attempting to save Midgard, Thor does do battle with the Serpent, saving Midgard, aka Earth, but at the cost of his own life. That is, of course, until he's next resurrected, as so often happens with our favorite heroes in comics. Sometimes you just gotta defeat a demigorge and then you're back to life. You know how it goes. Man, comics. Number 5, DC vs. Vampires. DC vs. Vampires is another monster mashup of an alternate reality where the heroes of that world are overrun by monsters. In this case, the monsters being, you guessed it, vampires. The loses start, of course, with the very first issue, as the premise for this tale is set up. Okay, Premise: Mary, Queen of Blood, has been killed, and despite being a villain, she was the only one holding back vampires from all-out war. Andrew Bennett, aka I-Vampire, attempts to hunt her killers down in order to find out what is going on and why, and discovers a plot of vampire kind to take over Earth, not just starting a war, but almost completely eradicating the human race, at least eradicating their powers. The plan involves taking over the planet, subjugating the human population, and keeping them around only to treat them basically like cattle. Andrew ends up getting proof, a vial of one survivor's blood, Lex Luthor, which also seems to be weaponized against vampires. He also then decides to head out to the Justice League to warn them, but in the end he is defeated by an already turned Hal Jordan. Hal's evil again, oh gosh, who would have guessed? And that's just the beginning of the story, so it gets a lot more vampires taking over the world, if you like that jam. I personally like that jam. I'm like, yeah, put me in that jam. I like when vampires take over the world. Let's go. Number 4. Purple Man for President. Purple Man's presidency takes place in an alternate reality of Earth 460, and it's actually his rise to power that also creates another alternate universe, a very famous one, in fact, you could say. The reality of Earth 311, aka the 1602 reality. This is because Purple Man initially is imprisoning and killing all heroes alive who still oppose him. But with Captain America, Kilgrave sees a greater threat there. If he kills Cap, Cap will basically become a martyr to the people. So instead, Purple Man simply removes Cap completely from the playing board, but not in such a way that the populace can rally around, Cap's defeat or death. Kilgrave sends Rogers back to the year 1599, and thereby accidentally creates a superhero reality set in the past, that of 1602. Number 3. Death Metal. During Death Metal, our heroes lost hardcore. That is before they won, but still, they lost at one point. They are lucky they were permitted to stick around, as that is the only way they were able to come back from such a dark place. Pun intended. Because it's Dark Knights, Death Metal. Get it? I'll just see myself out. During Death Metal, the trinity of Superman, Wonder Woman, and of course Batman ended up going against a Batman Who Laughs and his cohort Persephone. In the end, the first time around anyways, they lost and the world became reshaped temporarily in a darker image. The trinity were split up, with Wonder Woman reluctantly agreeing to join Batman Who Laughs. She didn't really have much of a choice. That's how she actually got her Chainsaw of Truth though, which I love that Chainsaw of Truth, it's so cool. And that's also how in the end the trinity was able to survive until a point that they could each get free and then basically rejoin back up with one another. Ultimately, Wonder Woman would sacrifice herself to save the multiverse, banishing the dark multiverse and restarting everything, setting it right again after getting a glimpse into the potential future, which we would know as Future State. But before that happened, it seemed as though the core JLA members would be trapped and defeated forever. It was a pretty hopeless time for a little bit there. Number 2. Time runs out. In some cases, antagonists aren't so much people aiming to defeat heroes, but are instead simply seeming natural occurring disasters which cannot be stopped. Sometimes that's the villain of the story. No matter how hard our heroes try, they just can't beat it. That is essentially how Time Runs Out ends, with Iron Man and Captain America being crushed by the unavoidable doom that is the Incursions. Literally crushed. The final incursion smooshed Earth 616 and Earth 1610 together, seemingly ending both universes. However, in the end, Dr. Doom would step up to the plate, accepting the power of Molecule Man and defying the Beyonders by saving the multiverse and creating his own battle world. But before all of that went down, everyone was trying to figure out how to stop these incursions, and ultimately were pretty much failing at doing so. In the end, it came down to infighting between Tony and Steve as everyone else prepared their lifeboats, hoping to preserve at least a few of the best of them. As Steve blamed Tony and the two fought on, the incursions arrived, squishing them and seemingly, at least momentarily, ending everything, but not so much in the end. Number 1. Deceased. If you thought Marvel Zombies was bleak, wait till you head to the DC version of that reality, Deceased. Here, instead of everyone being infected by a traditional zombie virus, it's more comic codified than that. In Deceased, the heroes and villains of the world instead become overtaken by the anti-life equation, which in this case turns them into hyper-violent, seemingly mindless beings driven only by rage. Basically, different versions of zombies. Poor Cyborg even ends up kind of as patient zero in this, spreading said virus to the rest of the population and infecting many beloved heroes the world over.
Coming in at number 10, we have Quicksilver, the speedster that both Fox and Disney were throwing into the movies, which had a lot of comic fans confused. Like, how many nerds out there had to explain to their friends why the same character was in 2 movies but played by different people, but they weren't in the same universe? Thankfully, the MCU is now all connected and we don't need to have that conversation again, as long as Sony doesn't try to rip Spider-Man away from us. I couldn't handle that another time. For fans of the X-Men comics, you will be well aware of the House of M storyline. This was one of the most monumental events that has ever happened in the Marvel Universe, and it changed the mutant race forever. Scarlet Witch was going through an immense amount of emotional stress, and she was at her breaking point and decided that she would use her reality-altering powers to reshape the world forever. She called out, "No more humans," and the population of superpowered beings that was in the range of 1.2 million was now pulled down to less than 200. Over 1 million mutants were stripped of their powers, and Quicksilver was along with them. I wonder how it felt experiencing the crushing boredom of traffic for the first time ever in your life. Coming in at number 9, we have the Green Lantern. Hal Jordan has often been used as a representation of the man when it comes to any sort of social issue brought up in the DC universe when he's involved. After all, he is a cop, so it kind of fits the bill for his character. Well, in the 70s, there was a lot going on in the world when it came to American politics, and DC wanted to take this on with Green Lantern and the Green Arrow. They were going down to try and calm the American people. Do you think these two guys became friends just because they both wear green? It was like the easiest form of association. Well, the two of them went down to confront some American miners who were protesting for better wages. And because Hal had been spending so much time on Earth, his ring was feeling a little bit weak. He tried to confront the miners to get them to stop, and in this moment, his ring lost all of its power. Also, the miners were fully locked and loaded with guns, so it was a little bit of a sticky situation. Coming in at number 8, we have Miss Marvel, one of the most super powerful characters in the Marvel Universe. Following a similar space cop motif that Green Lantern uses, it would seem that very few people would be able to stand up to her. I mean, we all remember in Avengers Endgame when she took a headbutt from Thanos without even flinching, but that doesn't mean that she's impervious to any sort of harm, especially when we're talking about harm coming from Rogue. Miss Marvel and Rogue got into a one-on-one conflict that would change the two characters forever. In this clash, Rogue comes in contact with Miss Marvel and uses her vampiric power draining abilities, but she wasn't nice about it. Rogue drained Miss Marvel until she sucked out every last ounce of super powered energy that was inside of her, making Rogue insanely strong and leaving Miss Marvel not that marvelous. Next on the list, we got Superman. Some people would love to see Superman become less powerful just because it might make the character a little bit more interesting, but that's tough to do because so much of the DC universe has been built around his godlike presence. One way that this has been done tastefully was when the New 52 run of Superman introduced a new power. Superman could now perform what would be called a super flare. As many of you know, Superman gets his power from the sun. This solar energy builds up in his body like a smartphone battery charging. On a few occasions, when he comes out of contact with the sun for too long, he will lose his powers and all of his abilities. But with this super flare, he can unleash all that energy stored in his body in one blast like a massive nuke. However, when he does this, he will be without his powers for 24 hours as his body sucks in that good sunlight. Next on the list, we have Storm, one of the coolest comic book characters ever created. I've always been a fan of any hero who has storm powers because there is so much you can do with them. Got a fire? Bring in some rain. Got a big monster? Hit it with some lightning. Got a town that needs clean energy? Build a windmill and then create some wind. But in Uncanny X-Men issue 185, Storm would no longer be the queen of weather. This was because the future mutant Forge worked with Henry Peter Gyrich to come up with a weapon that could be used to neutralize a mutant's powers. See, Gyrich was a little bit peeved because Rogue had recently gotten into a major conflict with S.H.I.E.L.D. This led to Gyrich attempting to depower Rogue with this newly crafted weapon, but a misfire led to it hitting Storm. Right next on the list, we have Bruce Banner. Jason Aaron did one of my favorite runs of the Hulk. There's a short series where this time Hulk gets rid of Banner, not the other way around. The Hulk goes to see Dr. Doom, and Doom genetically grows a Banner clone and then surgically removes the section of Hulk's brain which contains Banner and implants it into this new clone. So now the two can coexist without each other. Hulk actually deals with this very well. He checks out the world and ignores everything that the previous superpowered world would bring to him, but it refuses to leave him alone. Banner eventually goes mad and starts making an island of superpowered Hulk beasts with an attempt to recreate the Hulk in his own body. A team of mad scientist hunters commission the Hulk to work with them to take out the newly insane Banner, and the two sides of the same coin go head on, and that's only in the first few issues. It gets way crazier down the road. Right after Hulk, we have Thor. The Asgardian has always had a lot of family problems. If he's not fighting with his brother, it's with his dad or his sister. On one occasion, Odin thought it was time to teach Thor a tough lesson. Because Thor is insanely powerful, he's always walked around as a brutish thug who wants to punch first and ask questions later. Odin thought it was time that he learned some empathy for those who aren't able to wield a hammer that was made out of a fallen star. So he stripped him of his power and then sent him to Earth. Now Thor might have walked around like an angry kid who wants to have cookies for breakfast, but Odin solved this problem by also wiping his memory. This way Thor would be forced to be a real person and see what it's like to feel and act like a normal person. Of course he eventually got his memory back and returned to the mantle of God of Thunder. Right after that we have Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange lost his powers in one of the coolest, dumbest ways possible. Earth was under attack from the Impericul, which are a futuristic robot race from another dimension. They hate magic and travel through time and space to destroy it in every form. The Impericul came to Earth to battle Doctor Strange, and Strange summoned up all the magic on Earth into his body in an attempt to destroy the Impericul leader, but this failed and left Strange in a weakened state with no magic left on the planet for him to use his powers. Coming in at number 2, we have Wonder Woman. Strength is a cornerstone of this character, and with the loss of her powers, it was shown that she can represent that in more ways than one. In the 70s, Wonder Woman willingly gave up her powers because she sought to follow her heart. If she was to stay the superpowered goddess, it would mean she would have to return to Themyscira and leave behind the heartthrob Steve Trevor. In her newly depowered state, she didn't give up her life of hero work. She went on to study a new martial art, probably making her even more powerful in the long run. I mean, if you can kick someone's butt while you're just regular flesh and blood, then when you pack some superpowered juice into that, you can start knocking people out like 19-year-old Mike Tyson. Part of the change to this character was to coincide with the women's movement that was happening in the 70s. DC Comics wanted to represent a strong female character that could be closer associated to the female readers that were picking up the comic. And for the number 1 spot, we have Wolverine. It would be pretty hard to be Wolverine without the powers. I mean, even take Superman. On a few occasions, he has been stripped of his powers, and he's still that Boy Scout at heart and will do what's right no matter what. But with Wolverine, a big part of his personality is being able to be punched in the face and come back like nothing happened, which probably made the loss of his powers even more interesting. Back in 2013, Wolverine was infected with a very advanced virus that attacked his healing factor. It basically made him so he was just a regular guy. Well, a regular guy that could probably still crank out 100 pull-ups. But this was so severe that he couldn't even use his claws anymore, so he had wrist-mounted claws. I guess you can take the powers out of the Wolverine, but you can't stop him from trying to slice people in half. Now, this level of aggression without the healing factor backing him up eventually led to his death.
Number 10, oil needed, Iron Man. Back in Iron Man's early days, his suits weren't up to par with what we're familiar with today. In Avengers issue 2, right after the team's inaugural issue, the group fights Space Phantom, who intends on invading Earth with an alien force. Phantom comes to the planet first and ends up impersonating members of the Avengers team, which causes a lot of confusion and fighting within the team. The group has caught on to Space Phantom's shtick, and Thor incapacitates him by using his weather manipulation abilities to create a rainstorm that causes Iron Man's suit to rust over. Now, to be fair, it was Space Phantom impersonating Tony Stark here, and technically he was the one to suffer the loss. But considering that he was mimicking the hero, that's a pretty bad design flaw to bring to light. Needless to say, we're glad that Tony caught on to that before any real damage occurred to the beloved hero. Up next, number 9, Batwoman as a plot device. Always a shame when a superhero, especially a female superhero, is used merely as a plot device to further the story of another character, usually a male. It's really the basis of the women in refrigerators argument. Don't know it? Google it. you should. Anyway, this was the case with the initial Batwoman Kathy Kane. While the modern day Batwoman Kate Kane has gone above and beyond her former iteration, back in the day when she was created in 1956 as a means to give Batman a Batman family in the aftermath of the Comics Code Authority, and claims that Batman and Robin were gay, she was literally a fluff heroine whose utility belt included devices disguised as lipstick and compact mirrors. Yeah. When Detective Comics issue 485 came around in 1979, Kathy Kane was killed off unceremoniously, with the League of Assassins brutally murdering her. The whole story was a plot device for Batman to have a reason to go after the League of Assassins. Yikes. Moving on to number 8, Hank Pym and Pymtron. Oh, this one is sad. Hank Pym has one of the most ridiculous histories as far as Marvel characters are concerned. He has been through a lot, but most recently we witnessed a whole new humiliating saga for Henry Pym in which he physically merged with Ultron, the robot he created in the comics that became one of the most memorable Avengers foes. During the Infinity Countdown story arc, Ultron managed to steal the Soul Gem, and a fragment of Hank's soul ended up trapped within the Stone Soul world. Now at the time the two had merged, but really it was just kind of Ultron wearing Hank's skin. While Hank was in there, he experienced an idyllic fantasy in which the Avengers had saved him and he was home reunited with his friends. In reality, a demon, the all-consuming Devondra, was busy consuming his soul. We haven't heard from him since. And it's been a little while and he might be gone forever, but probably not, cause comics. But even then he'll probably be brought back and something horrible will happen to him. It's the Hank Pym way. Up next, number 7, Batman punched by Hal Jordan. Batman has long disliked members of the Green Lantern Corps. It took him a very long time to be willing to trust Hal Jordan after he had become Parallax in the Emerald Twilight storyline. While Hal was possessed by the villain, he ended up going on a rampage and killing several Lanterns and Guardians, and we all know how Bruce has major trust issues. In Green Lantern Rebirth issue 6, Hal has had enough with Batman's resentment and open hostility. Hal felt he had paid his dues. He sacrificed himself to reignite the sun after he was resurrected, and he's been working real hard to prove to everyone that he is one of the good guys. Batman doesn't entirely buy it, so what does Hal do? Well, he punches him in front of a bunch of other Green Lanterns. But to be fair, Batman kinda had it coming. He's long been an to not just Hal Jordan, but to other Green Lanterns in the past. Which actually brings us to our next number. In at 6, Batman punches a different Green Lantern. Long before Hal Jordan smashed his fist into the world's greatest detective's chin, Batman was on the giving end of a similar interaction. This time it was between the Caped Crusader and another Green Lantern, Guy Gardner, who is arguably the least liked Green Lantern out there. Cause he's a bit of a dick. Anyway, this went down in the Justice League issue 5 with Batman being fed up of Guy's insufferable attitude. Batman was the one in charge of the Justice League International team and Guy was just whining all the time. Guy makes it clear that he thinks Batman shouldn't be the leader of the team, and he's constantly sulking and complaining about how he should be the one in charge instead. So what does Bats do in order to establish his dominance? Well, he knocks Guy out with one punch in front of the rest of the team. Regardless of socking Guy in the face, Batman is still all business, getting a team meeting underway as Guy lies unconscious on the floor. The best part is the reactions from the rest of the team. In at number 5, Doctor Strange strangled by his cape. For this number, we're diving into an alternate universe in the Marvel Multiverse, the Ultimate Universe, Earth 1610. This universe is categorized by significantly grittier versions of our beloved 616 heroes, and during the penultimate event in that universe, Ultimatum, many a hero and villain experience particularly brutal demises, including Dr. Stephen Strange. While fighting against Dormammu, Strange is killed in one of the most absurd ways, by his own cloak. It's a move that's never been pulled by the ruler of the Dark Dimension in the regular 616, but in the Ultimate Universe it's something that surprisingly worked. Strange is strangled by his cloak, turning his face purple until his head explodes due to all of his blood being squeezed up into his head. Needless to say, it was pretty darn gruesome. Up next, number 4, Beast Boy and the drugged envelope. The Judas Contract is by far one of the most memorable Teen Titans stories in the group's history. During this story arc, a metahuman the name of Terra joins up with the Titans. Her and Beast Boy, aka Changeling, which is what he was going by at the time, developed a bit of a romantic relationship. It's then revealed that Terra has been playing the Titans all along, and is in cahoots with one of their biggest foes, Deathstroke. During the story's climax, the sinister duo uses various methods to subdue the Titans, one of which is really embarrassing for Beast Boy. They take advantage of his vanity, sending him dozens of letters with requests for autographs from fangirls. Gar is like super into this, and he gets straight to work signing pictures and licking envelopes. But turns out the glue on the envelopes has been drugged. As he realizes what's happened, he is knocked out cold. Up next, number 3, Wasp, and that time that she fell out of a tree. Yes, this is actually a thing that happened. And yes, you probably guessed it, it happened during the Silver Age, when comics were at their wackiest. This case in particular featured Avengers member Wasp, who had escaped conflict in an exhausted state, seeking out the rest of the team in aid, because apparently back in the early days of the Avengers, she wasn't overly useful. In the process, when shrunken down, she's almost eaten by a hungry little bird. But after growing in size, the tree branch that she was perched on snaps, and she falls to the ground, unable to shrink down in time to save herself. So she lands on the ground and is knocked unconscious. Perhaps my favorite part of these panels is the very end, where the final panel reads, "But now we must leave the fallen Avenger as she lies silent and still in the lonely glen, for there are other urgent matters which concern us." God, jeez. Clearly even the writers didn't care about Wasp back then. Kinda harsh, guys. Up next, number 2, Wonder Woman and men. In Wonder Woman's earlier days, she had to endure a handful of stories in which her feminist prowess was shut down by silly plot devices. Like this one. According to the Amazonian law in the Golden Age, if a man ever binded Wonder Woman's bracelets together, she would lose her powers. Seems kind of counterintuitive to her character, doesn't it? Part of this was because of her creator William M. Marston's BDSM background and influence on Wonder Woman's characters. Case in point, when this occurred, Wonder Woman has a thought bubble that reads, "When an Amazon girl permits a man to chain her bracelets of submission together, she becomes weak as other women in a man-ruled world." For f***ing sake. I mean, yes, it was the 40s after all. We're just glad this silly stipulation has been retconned out of existence. Last but not least, in our number 1 spot, Deathstroke kicks the JLA's butts. This is arguably the Justice League of America's most embarrassing failure. Potentially. In the Identity Crisis storyline, Elongated Man's wife, Sue Dibney, is murdered, with Dr. Light presumed to be the murderer. Over the course of the story, it becomes apparent that members of the Justice League have been in on a whole controversial mind-wipe scheme that individuals like Batman were not privy to. It's a whole lot of moral grayness, and the way Sue's rape at the hands of Dr. Light was approached is something that the story gets a lot of heat for. Spoiler alert, the JLA's response was to mind-wipe everyone who was involved. Batman was also mind-wiped in order to prevent him from making everyone take the moral high ground. Anyway, that's all context. Dr. Light, who had been mind-wiped into a literal buffoon, hired Deathstroke Slade Wilson to help protect himself from the JLA. Deathstroke takes on Green Arrow, The Flash, Zatanna, Elongated Man, Hawkman, the Atom, and Black Canary. And guess what? Deathstroke won.
Number 10, the Plutonian. If you're familiar with the Irredeemable series, then you will likely already know why I put it so low on the list today. But if you're not, that's no worries. This entire storyline is about the Plutonian, the supposed strongest hero ever to exist, and is all about a superhero snapping and losing control. Very little is known about the Plutonian, even by the people who are supposed to be very close with him, but he draws a lot of parallels with Superman, as he has a Fortress of Solitude-like hideout in a volcano, and not to mention his powers are basically the same with a few more sprinkled in there for fun. Mark Waid, the writer, argues that not all superheroes are mentally equipped to deal with the power and responsibility of being a superhero, so it's bound to happen that one would lose it and just go completely mental. This story follows the Plutonian as he slaughters the people of Earth and all of his former friends, family, and allies. The comic evolves into making the Plutonian a supervillain, or at least shows him in the early stages of it. He's a hero on the edge of losing complete control, and it does a great job of showing how others are meant to deal with the mess that he creates. I highly recommend you check out Boom Studios' Irredeemable series. It has a total of 37 issues, and it really is a great read. Number 9, Green Lantern. The specific Green Lantern that I'll be talking about is Hal Jordan after his home was destroyed in 1992 to 1993's Death of Superman's storyline. At one point during the story, Coast City was destroyed by Mongol, and Hal was not very happy about that, to say the least. To try and resurrect the city back to its former glory, Hal attempts to use the power of his Green Lantern ring, but its power is revoked before he can make it permanent. Consumed by grief and anger, he ends up becoming the villain Parallax and goes on a mass killing spree, killing almost all of the other Green Lanterns so he could take their rings and absorb their power. It ended up getting to the point where Hal was so powerful that he was one of the most feared superheroes in the galaxy, and to date this is considered to be one of the most strongest iterations of the character. And even though it's not really his fault since he was under the control of Parallax, you'd still think that his strong will would at least have tried to resist the temptation, but alas, that wasn't the case. Why not give this story a read for yourself so you can see just how strong Hal became by starting with 1992 Superman, The Man of Steel, Volume 1, number 18. Number 8. Ant-Man. The specific series that I'll be talking about for Ant-Man is the Ultimatum series that ran in 2016, and yes, I know that it's not considered canon by many people, but we're not talking canon, we're talking about losing control, and that's exactly what happened to Ant-Man in this twisted storyline. Within the first 5 pages of the first issue, everything goes terribly wrong as out of nowhere the sky darkens and all of Manhattan is flooded, and many of our heroes are submerged underwater. Some are lucky enough to resurface, but unfortunately Janet Van Dyne, aka the Wasp, drowned and Hank was unable to find her no matter how hard he tried. Following the tidal wave and in the second issue after the water had cleared, we see the entire city of Manhattan in shambles and overrun with criminals doing their thing, and this is exactly when we see Ant-Man and Hawkeye come across the villain the Blob as he's feasting on Janet's body. This obviously did not sit well with Hank, so standing at about 60 stories tall as Giant Man, he just picks up the Blob, states that he is not going to play around with him, and then straight up just bites his head off and spits it out on the ground. The loss of a loved one can really push people to do some crazy things, and apparently it can push a hero to the point of murder. Check out this storyline for yourself, or feel free to skip ahead to issue 3, where this gruesome scene takes place. Number 7. Daredevil. In 2003's Daredevil Volume 2 number 49, we get to see a side of Daredevil that we rarely get to see. Obviously Matt Murdock has gone off the rails a few times and flipped out thanks to his bad temper, but man, this was different. In this issue we see Bullseye show up at Matt's place after he's already killed Karen Page and Elektra, just to kill another one of his girlfriends, and upon his arrival Matt immediately throws him out a window and begins the beatdown of a lifetime. He took so much joy from beating the villain and mocking the Bullseye tattoo on his forehead, and just to really bring home the rage and get his point across, Daredevil grabbed a rock from the ground and carved the bullseye into the villain's forehead, making it even more permanent than it already was by forever scarring it. It's not even the action that's so insane, because like I said, with Ant-Man, the loss of a loved one can really lead you to do some pretty crazy things, but it's his reaction afterward, just smiling ear to ear, biggest grin you've ever seen in your life. Give this issue a read for yourself to see how truly merciless DD can really be, because man, saying I was surprised is truly an understatement. Number 6. Cyclops. Scott Summers has always had trouble controlling his powers, that's no secret, but during the events of 2012's Avengers vs. X-Men, it only got worse. In this 12-issue storyline, we see the Phoenix Force get fragmented and inhabit 5 prominent characters in the X-Men universe: Cyclops, Emma Frost, Colossus, Magic, and Namor, and the whole storyline basically watches the Avengers and the X-Men do their best to take down the Phoenix Force. In issue 11, we saw a crazed Phoenix Force-powered Cyclops lose himself to his newfound thirst for power. The issue ended with a big showdown between Cyclops and his mentor, Professor Xavier. Xavier tried to convince his surrogate son to relinquish the powers and come back to the good side, but Cyclops resisted and instead embraced the full power of the Phoenix and killed Charles Xavier. This was such a shocking moment because Scott is normally so level-headed and controlled, and to see him so power-hungry and full of rage is a side of him I never thought we would see. It can be argued that it wasn't his fault since he wasn't the mastermind behind everything, but he is still the one who lost control and snapped, so he has to deal with what he did. Number 5. Green Arrow. Another character who is usually pretty good at keeping his cool, however, in 2010's Justice League Cry for Justice storyline, his patience and control are pushed to their absolute limits, and needless to say, he did not deal with the pressure too well. This is all thanks to Prometheus, a villain determined to attack superheroes and hit them where it hurts the most. In this story, the Red Arrow had his arm completely ripped off, and then his daughter was crushed as part of Prometheus' plan. This really pissed off the Green Arrow, but he decided to let Prometheus go after he'd been captured, and it seemed like, for a time, that the Green Arrow had kept his emotions in check. But then the scene shifted to Prometheus' lair, and we saw that was not the case, even in the slightest. Prometheus heard a noise behind him, and when he turned to investigate, he saw that Green Arrow had come to pay him a little visit. After a very brief discussion, the Green Arrow shoots an arrow straight into Prometheus' forehead, sticking him to the wall and killing him, stating that Prometheus never knew that at his core, Green Arrow wasn't a hero. He was a hunter. Check this storyline out for yourself and let me know what you think about it in the comments below. I personally love Green Arrow, and I think this ruthless side of him is pretty freaking sweet. Number 4. Spider-Man. Back in Black, a great AC/DC song, but also a Spider-Man storyline that ran in 2007. After a sniper's bullet changes everything for Peter Parker and his life, he dons his infamous black costume once more. From then on, Spider-Man would stop at nothing to find the man who pulled the trigger and, even more important, the man who gave the order to kill. This is truly Spider-Man at his darkest hour. Now, I realize that was probably a little bit vague, so I'll just tell you straight up. Aunt May is the one who was shot, and this caused Peter to go off the rails. He tracked down everyone involved with the shooting and found that it all led to the Kingpin. He found the Kingpin in prison and he beat the living daylights out of him. He beat him within an inch of his life and then promised to kill him if Aunt May was to actually die. After he beat him to a pulp and got Fisk really scared, Peter decided to let him live with the shame of being handily beaten by a guy half his size in front of literally everyone in prison. Certainly surprising that the joke-filled webhead could be so ruthless, but I don't know, can you really blame him? Give the storyline a read for yourself by checking out 2007's Amazing Spider-Man number 539 to 543. Number 3, The Hulk. You always have to include the Hulk on any list that involved the hero losing control, cause it's the Hulk, it's kind of his thing. In World War Hulk, the sequel to Planet Hulk, the Hulk is married to Kara, and they have a child on the way. After he's tricked by the Illuminati and sent into space with her, their spaceship exploded and she and the unborn child were unfortunately killed. Now, we all know that the Hulk has a very bad temper during the best of times, so you can only imagine what this tragedy did to him. I feel like I don't need to say it, but I will anyways. He went absolutely insane. He traveled from place to place, smashing everyone and everything in his path, and he single-handedly destroyed so many different superheroes that I won't even start to list them because I would be here for hours. Eventually his rage grows to such an extreme that the radiation threatens the entire Earth and he is taken down to save the planet. Even if you consider how grouchy the Hulk is and how often he loses it, this is entirely a different level for him. Give the story a read for yourself, starting with 2007's World War Hulk Prologue World Breaker Volume 1. Number 2, Wolverine. You probably know what I'm going to be talking about if you're a fan of the X-Men series when it comes to Wolverine. In the Wolverine Old Man Logan storyline, we get to see the vicious side of Wolverine that we have all come to know and love. However, this time it wasn't necessarily his fault. So basically it's the future and Logan is now an old man, and he hasn't used the Wolverine persona or his claws since this mysterious night in the past when a bunch of villains supposedly attacked. We learn through some flashbacks that a massive group of 40 supervillains attacked the X-Men mansion, and during this attack, Wolverine gets in touch with his primal side and goes absolutely crazy and kills every single one of them. After the fight and the intense slaughter, things change and Wolverine realizes it was all just an illusion. The entire time Wolverine had his vision and mind altered by Mysterio, and all the villains that he killed in combat were actually his fellow X-Men. This destroyed Logan and he decided to retire his Wolverine mantle after that, essentially killing that part of him so he would never do something like that again. It's definitely a very sad way to end a run as a hero, but I see why he felt that was necessary. Give this a read for yourself, starting with 2018's Old Man Logan Volume 1, Number 1, and while you're at it, why not rewatch the movie Logan and see if you can, draw any comparison. Number 1, Tara. If you're like me, then your first introduction to Tara was probably through the Teen Titans TV show, and man, I always remember thinking how cool of a character she was, and in the specific issue that I'm going to be talking about today, we get to see exactly how crazy strong she can be. The Dark Multiverse Teen Titans The Judas Contract reimagines one of the most renowned stories in comic book history, The Judas Contract. In this reimagining, Tara's betrayal starts with not the Teen Titans, but with Deathstroke himself. Now free from her mentor's influence and supercharged by the same serum that turned Slade Wilson into the world's deadliest man, Tara works to forge a new destiny written in the Teen Titans' blood. Now calling herself Gaia and viewing herself as a literal goddess, she changed her costume and attacked the Teen Titans Tower, killing Raven, Starfire, Wonder Girl, and Cyborg before battling against Robin and Kid Flash, who she was also able to overpower and kill. I could continue the list of who she killed, but again, we would be here forever, so I'll save you the trouble. She managed to destabilize the Earth's core, and from then on she forced every remaining being on Earth to bow down to her as a god. Pretty insane, right? Highly recommend you check this story out for yourself. Amanda McKnight and I have been talking about it ever since I started here, and we would love to hear your thoughts on it too.
Number 10, Batman. Ooh, one of my favorite heroes out there, especially right now. Despite Batman claiming to always be so in control, even he has his limits. We've seen countless realities and Elseworlds where Batman completely loses control and even becomes some of the most powerful and unstoppable villains we've ever seen in DC's history. And we got a lot of unstoppable villains. But when it comes to Batman, one of the biggest villains I can think of for him is Batman Who Laughs. Batman is a villain who loves to prepare for any potential crisis, but often it is this obsession that ends up being his downfall. And even in the main continuity, there are a few times that Bruce has teetered near the edge of losing it. Also in the Batman Telltale game, granted at least that loss of control, well, it wasn't really his fault. Number 9, Cersei. Cersei is a member of the Eternals, who admittedly have all flown off the handle before at some point. But in Cersei's case, this has happened more than once. Cersei at one point suffered from an eternal illness known as Madwari. Madwari? That sounds weird, but I'm just gonna assume I'm saying it right. Which appeared to make her more aggressive, even pushing her to, at times, kill her opponents. Her change in demeanor was also denoted in the comics via a change in costume. I love a good costume change, with her wearing a bright red number in place of her more common green superhero attire. I mean, I feel like red or green, either way you do it, I love both those colors personally. In order to help cure Cersei, who refused to acknowledge her illness and initially resisted the help of her friends, they decided to place her in Gonjosin with the Black Knight, forging a soul bond between the two, which would go on to basically cause a series of other awkward problems, as Black Knight and Crystal were more in love at the time than Black Knight and Cersei. And later on, there would end up being an alternate version of Dane Whitman, aka Black Knight, hell-bent on killing every version of Cersei across the multiverse. But hey, that's a story for another time. And all you nerds out there, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists like it, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. The Flash. In the comics, Barry has lost it a few times, usually as a result of Eobard Thawne, Professor Zoom, manipulating him. One of the earliest examples of this in Barry's history was when Thawne attempted to do harm to Barry's fiancée on the day of their wedding. This also happened after Thawne had already killed Iris West, who is Barry's one true love. Fearing for his fiancée Fiona's life and not willing to lose another romantic partner again, can't blame him, after what happened to Iris, Barry shouted, "Not again!" and snapped Thawne's neck. As a result of this excessive use of force, Barry actually ended up losing his fiancée Fiona anyways and was put on trial. It all worked out in the end though, as he managed to escape to the future where Iris was waiting for him. And I know what you're thinking. Wait a minute, I thought you said Iris was dead, so how could she be alive in the future? Well, this is the Flash, so time travel and such, and I don't know, maybe clones, it is comics. Look, it doesn't matter anyways because this happy ending also was interrupted shortly thereafter by Crisis. All of our happy endings got interrupted by Crisis. Woo! Number 7. Storm. Now granted, this one wasn't really Storm's fault, or her intention, but was more something that happened as a result of people preying on Storm's intense claustrophobia, or at least her past claustrophobia, as I think Storm actually managed to move past those fears in recent years, and she no longer really is affected by them in the same way. However, at that time, Storm was severely claustrophobic, so when she ended up being encased in a sort of skin-tight chrome casing, she lost it. I mean, I would lose it too if someone put me in a chrome casing. Doesn't sound very comfortable. Storm appeared to threaten the world over with a massive storm while under duress. The X-Men managed to eventually get through to her and calm her down, which was fortunate as her power levels at the time were compared to the Phoenix. That's how scary Storm losing it can be. That's how scary Storm can be in general. Not a hero you want to push past the brink or, you know, piss off. Just respect Storm. I think that's fair. I think we can all respect Storm, yeah? Number 6. The Flash. Again, but the other Flash. You know what I mean. Wally West is known for being one of the most powerful heroes out there as the Flash. Honestly, I have always felt that super speed is right up there with one of the best power sets. I would agree with Amanda on that. He's also known for being one of the best heroes out there when it comes to his capacity for goodness. All around, Wally is just a lovable dude, but that doesn't mean that he is immune to the pressures sometimes inflicted upon our favorite heroes. Wally himself experienced a loss of control over his speed powers and his emotions during his time at Sanctuary, basically a safe haven for heroes to go and talk about their feelings, basically allowing them to do therapy in a safe environment. But it wasn't really open to villains, unfortunately. I thought it was pretty unfortunate anyways. I feel like I should be included, you know, I'm moving towards being a hero, right? Wally's paranoia, mainly caused by the reset of the New 52 continuity as he remembered the previous one, New Earth, resulted in him rifling through the files at the Sanctuary. Now this overloaded his mind with intense emotions and basically resulted in him losing control, killing tons of heroes who were present at the time accidentally. Wally attempted to make things right while initially hiding what he'd done, making Booster Gold and myself, Harley Quinn, seem like the likely suspects. But it wasn't us, we didn't do it. But eventually, Wally would also come clean. And this also all went down in Heroes in Crisis. So many crises. We really love our crises over at DC, don't we? Number 5. Scarlet Witch. Poor Poor Wanda. Like many heroes on our list here, her loss of control wasn't really all her fault. Wanda for years had issues with feeling unworthy of love, leaving her feeling undervalued and resulting in her constantly ending up in questionable romances and doing her best to please everyone around her. So when her so-called friends lashed out when Wanda created her and Vision's children, kind of warping reality to have and keep them, it pushed her past her breaking point. When Wanda had discovered that her children were taken from her, she became unstable and eventually she kinda snapped, resulting in the events of House of M. And even there, once again, she was trying to not just give herself a perfect world, but also give all of her friends, family, and her colleagues theirs too. And even then, it still wasn't enough. Now look, I'm not saying that she was completely justified in her actions, just that it's understandable that all this unresolved trauma resulted in M-Day when you consider how powerful the Scarlet Witch is. Unresolved trauma is a huge problem, especially in comic books. If you have some unresolved trauma, it's definitely gonna mess you up. Number 4. Sentry. Sentry is a hero who is known for being one of the most powerful and yet one of the most unstable around. He basically was losing it from pretty much day one. While Robert Reynolds invented a story where he was a voluntary test subject who was chosen to receive the Golden Sentry Serum, in reality, he was a drug addict looking for a fix who stumbled upon it while breaking into a lab one night. At this point, he was already struggling mentally, and so when he became the Sentry, he also became the Void, with his heroic persona also suffering from his dissociative identity disorder. It was also implied that Mastermind made this worse or potentially unleashed this whole thing, but the reality is Robert Reynolds had struggled since the beginning, so it's more likely that Mastermind simply made things just even worse when it came to Bob's dissociative identity disorder, his DID. While the Sentry is supposed to be one of the greatest and most powerful heroes ever in Marvel Comics, the Void is supposed to be just the opposite, one of the worst and most deadly villains to have ever existed. Number 3. Superman. In Injustice, Superman completely snapped when he was faced with the fact that he'd killed Lois Lane and their unborn child together. Now, this was not his fault, mind you, as he was being manipulated into thinking that Lois was Doomsday, so he lost it. He killed Joker and decided that the world needed a more severe kind of justice. A justice that would not allow any crime to continue, even if it meant taking control of the entire world in order to do so, which was pretty much what Supes did, along with his own loyal version of the Justice League, of course. This did create a big split amongst those heroes, as some felt Superman was in the right, while others thought taking people's freedoms away, no matter the reason, was never really worth it. And I kinda gotta agree with those other heroes. Number 2. Raven. I mean, Raven has to work constantly to keep herself from losing control of her powers and herself. Raven's emotions can cause her to completely lose control and turn to the dark side, both when it comes to her powers and her own inner self. One of my favorite points to come back to for levels of evilness and losing it for Raven is the Nightwing and Starfire New Titans wedding issue number 100, for those interested in checking that out. Not only does evil Raven crash Dick and Corey's wedding and threaten Starfire, which is already a lot, I gotta admit, but she also sets up just how awful this is going to go right from the start when she arrives and immediately incinerates the priest. Yikes. Talk about an entrance. It's actually impressive to me that after the number of times Raven has turned super duper evil, she still manages to return to the side of heroism time and time again, and find a level of forgiveness from her peers. I mean, I feel like I've done a lot of bad stuff, but I don't know if I have anything on Raven. I know it's not really her fault most times, but she's done a lot of really bad things. Number 1. Phoenix. Jean Grey has lost control on a few occasions, but one of the most memorable is likely when she went from Phoenix to Dark Phoenix. Now, of course, in retrospect, this wasn't really Jean, but more an imprint and kind of adopted version of her used by the Phoenix Force. But still, it was made from Jean and likely represents what Jean would have done in that same position. So we can still kinda call it Jean. Comics are confusing. Phoenix ended up losing herself to the dark side after her interaction with the Hellfire Club. Interactions there caused Phoenix to snap, breaking through any mental barriers that were still holding on in her brain and causing her to give into her dark side, as the power overwhelmed her. One of the first actions was to make Mastermind lose his own mind when she allowed him to see just how much power she was dealing with on a psionic level, giving him a little taste of what she experienced and the information that she had instant access to, which overwhelmed him, rendering him catatonic. From there, it only got a lot more crazy, and it would end up with Dark Phoenix destroying a star and the surrounding planets, one of which was inhabited by, well, millions of people.
In a 10, Psylocke. During the follow-up to the original Contest of Champions story, a seemingly peaceful group of aliens invited the heroes to battle each other and showcase their abilities, with the reward being new tech for all of Earth. In reality though, this was the plan all by the Brood to drain the powers of Earth's greatest champions and then pump them into Rogue, who at the time was carrying the Brood's queen's consciousness. In this competition though, Iron Man was put up against Psylocke. Luckily, Iron Man had built some dampeners into his suit in an effort to limit psychic attacks. However, Psylocke was still able to create the illusion that she was Lady Mandarin once more, and she got the upper hand on Tony for a hot minute before eating it and then getting destroyed by the gold titanium alloy man. And a 9, Falcon. Falcon is an excellent flyer, and in Captain America's third MCU title movie, he is shown as quite the pro pilot, dodging and being able to keep pace with both Iron Man and War Machine, even breaking away a few times, once with the aid of Hawkeye and Ant-Man. However, when the chips are down and we're on the ground, Iron Man certainly has the upper hand, as he demonstrated in the brief moments when Falcon dodged Vision's beam and caused it to hit Rhodey's arc reactor, causing him to plummet hundreds of feet and screw up his legs. And you know, since they're still the good guys, Falcon goes up to check on Rhodey and see if he's okay, but Tony blasts him and knocks him to the ground with one single blast. I have to be honest, it counts, but it's still funny as hell. I love that scene. In an 8, Brother Voodoo. Jericho returned to his native Port-au-Prince, Haiti after 12 years of education and practice in the United States. His brother Daniel though was dying from the spell of a rival Bokor who claimed he served the evil serpent god Damballa. After only a few weeks, Jericho had reached a proficiency in voodoo even greater than his brothers though. To further increase his power, Papa Jambo performed a rite that summoned Daniel Drum's spirit back from the dead and joined it with Jericho's own. And in the Axis storyline, Brother Voodoo used this power to possess Scarlet Witch, who Iron Man then had to fight off. Brother Voodoo, possessing Wanda along with a good Doctor Doom and Red Skull, worked to reverse the spell that caused Axis, but Iron Man escaped its effects by throwing up a last-minute telepathic shield, protecting himself from its reversal. I think that it's weird, like having a good version of Doctor Doom, though. I mean, Doom is literally in his name, but okay. Iron Man still technically won then, just saying. And in 7, Magneto. Yes, at the time of the battle of Iron Man and Magneto, Magneto was on the up and up, and as far as I'm aware, currently is. During Avengers vs. X-Men number 2 from 2012, the Avengers engaged the X-Men on their island home Utopia to get their hands on Hope and stop the coming threat of the Phoenix. This issue, among other interwoven ones, showed various Avengers facing off against mutants like Cyclops and Emma Frost, and Magneto and Iron Man going toe to toe. Which seems to be absolutely easy cheese given Magneto's control over metal, but Tony knew about this and had a suit composed of carbon fiber tubes, as well as studying magnetism in his free time, because why not? So in a moment of distraction when Magneto realized what the Phoenix would actually bring power-wise, Tony managed to land a final blow and knock him from the sky. I mean, sure, Magneto had a moment of distraction that allowed Tony to win, but half of the fight is staying mentally in the fight. You fight with your skill and your mind, and Magneto dropped it. And at 6, Iron Man. In the Avengers crossover known as The Crossing, Iron Man beat himself. Yeah, that's not even the crazy part though. The big hook in this storyline is that many years ago, Kang came back in time and basically brainwashed Tony Stark in the early days of the Avengers. You might ask, what? And then you might ask again, seriously, bro, are you serious? And then another question of, if Tony Stark had been under Kang's control for all these years, why didn't Kang use Tony to help him any of the times that the Avengers actually had beaten Kang? And the answer to that is, of course, we have no idea. And then there was another bad idea that was thrown into the mix. The notion that Kang only turned to Tony after Hank Pym didn't actually fall for his mental tricks, which is why Hank has mental problems. Yeah, until one faithful team member had the genius idea to go back in time to get Tony Stark before Kang had brainwashed him, and then have that Tony fight against the older Tony. Tony actually ends up nearly killing his younger self, but hey, Iron Man won against Iron Man. Even if it was inevitable that an Iron Man would win, it's good enough for this list, damn it. Halfway through into number 5, Daredevil. In the aftermath of the Axis storyline I mentioned earlier, Tony remains swamped and starts using his tech for even more personal gain than before. Yeah, he's not evil exactly, but he's certainly not above getting all of San Francisco addicted to his new gene rewriting extremist app. Daredevil, who recently relocated to the city after being barred from practicing law in New York, doesn't like this for some reason, almost as if he has a conscience. But when he first confronts Tony in his new island mansion, the armored Avenger just tosses Matt Murdock into the ocean. Just flings him right out the window. They have another fight later on that is an actual fight, but Tony ends up winning yet again. 2 issues later though, Tony actually ends up saving Daredevil from falling off a building, but then traps him in armor and wipes his memory of all the bad things that he's discovered about Tony, so I don't think he did it for Matt's sake. And at 4, the Winter Soldier. Tony isn't able to get the upper hand on the Winter Soldier until he's sufficiently filled with rage of personal loss. And I mean, aren't we all? Rage is the fuel that makes the world go round. Which we actually see play out in the same movie as the fight with Falcon. After Tony learned that Bucky was actually the one responsible for his parents' car crash. I mean, I can see both sides of the coin here. Like, yeah, Bucky at the time was being controlled by Hydra, so it wasn't really him who did it, just his meat suit. But on the other hand, I wouldn't care. He killed my mommy. So yeah, I get why he went nuts. And I always find it funny that somehow Bucky always seems to end up losing his arm, at least his metal one, in some way or another. To be fair though, I don't think Tony would have blown off his arm if it wasn't metal. But like, imagine Bucky was faking having the whole metal arm thing the whole time. And it was just like a cool sleeve that he had that was hiding his real arm, and then Tony blew it off. It was like, ah! That'd be funny. I want to see that what if story. I know it would be absolutely horrific animation wise, but come on, please make it happen. Also, I'm pretty sure that they had the Disney Plus series for What If planned before Stan Lee's passing, and that they were going to reveal him as the Watcher, but couldn't, which is sad. I wish that had happened. Getting close to the end in number 3, Spider-Man. Iron Man and Spider-Man have fought almost as much as they've teamed up, with Civil War being one of the multiple times they did both. While Peter and Tony's connection during the 2005 run of New Avengers initially saw Spidey joining Team Iron Man in the conflict, which actually ended up resulting in Peter unmasking himself on live television, then coming to regret it and having some horrible future comic storylines. The wall crawler changes his tune once he learns about Tony's secret prison in the negative zone, the moral implications of which makes Peter switch sides, because, you know, he was imprisoning heroes who disagree with superhero registration in a different freaking yeah. Peter wins the first round despite Tony threatening to kill Aunt May and Mary Jane, but when the two meet at Yankee Stadium later on, Spider-Man gets absolutely pummeled. But don't worry, Spider-Man gives as good as he gets in other issues. Go watch the top 10 most powerful superheroes who lost to Spider-Man if you want more info on that. That's right, I'm telling you to go watch another video. But after this one, of course, you're only 2 numbers away. You only got 2 more to go. Stay. Penultimately, in at number 2, Hulk. Thanks to the versatility of Tony's suits and some help from Bruce Banner himself, Iron Man was able to take on the Hulk when Scarlet Witch sent him rampaging across South Africa in Avengers Age of Ultron, calling down Veronica, which I feel like should be a reference to the Archie comics, but I could be very wrong. The suit proved to be everything we could have hoped for as it went shot for shot with Hulk. The best scene from this fight though is when he grabs Hulk's hand and then traps it and then just jackhammers the other fist into Hulk's face. Oh, I love that. However, this isn't the only time they fought. They also fought in Iron Man number 132 in 1980, when Hulk punched Tony into a semi-truck, tried ripping his suit open underwater while Iron Man was trying to drown him, which I feel like might have been a bit extreme there, Tony. And even ripped off a chunk of the St. Louis Arch to use as a projectile. In the end though, it took Tony loading an insane amount of energy into his armor to deliver the final blow, taking the big green meanie down. After that though, Hulk turned into Banner and then Tony's suit busted, literally falling to the ground around him. Finally, in at number 1, Sentry. Iron Man's fight with Sentry from Siege number 4 in 2010 is one of those he was being controlled by an evil thing tropes, where technically Sentry was the Void at the time, and the Void may technically be a separate entity of purely negative energy, but it often manifests inside Sentry's body and in essence has the same abilities, so it's like Tony beat Sentry. This isn't a list of heroes that Tony fought while they were on the good side, okay? It's a list of the most powerful heroes that Tony has beat, even if they weren't heroes at the time. It's good enough. During the events of Siege, Void served Norman Osborn as part of his Dark Avengers, raining destruction down on Earth and Asgard, which is definitely an issue for the world, because you know, Earth. While Thor may have been the one to deal the killing blow, though Tony was the one who had weakened Void into a state where he could be killed. So good on you, Tony. You took down basically a god and lived. Pretty impressive if you ask me. Especially because didn't Sentry tear Ares in half or something nuts like that? I remember talking about that. I feel like that was Sentry. I think Sentry tore the Marvel version of Ares in half. Or was that another person? I can't remember.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Superman. We'll kick off the list with some mind-controlled madness here. We always love those. In part 1 of the Superman sacrifice storyline, Maxwell Lord had Superman thinking he was fighting Doomsday, but in reality he was fighting his own friend, Diana Prince. Now Superman does seem to do most of the damage here, but only because Diana was strategically using her lasso against him in hopes to cancel out the mind control. She had her wrist broken during this altercation, but eventually she realized the only way to stop Superman was to take out Maxwell Lord instead. But if she had not taken down Maxwell, she for sure would have won against mind-controlled, dare I say, messy Superman. She slashed his throat at one point and was still holding back. What a ride. Number 9, Green Lantern. Hal Jordan is one of the most powerful members of the Justice League. His ring allows him to get a lot done, but how does it hold up against the might of Wonder Woman? In the New 52, the team aren't exactly close yet. They have their arguments, it's realistic. They don't know each other too well, so it makes sense. But in Justice League issue 11, Wonder Woman sets out to take on David Graves. Steve Trevor is there and Diana plans on taking off Graves' head. So Green Lantern steps in with other ideas. He insists that this is a job for the League and not just for her, so she should back down or at least include them. She says no to both options. So Green Lantern uses his ring to hold her back, and after Diana demands to be let out, he responds with no. So she breaks out of the ring's construct and throws Green Lantern around for a few pages. She actually tries to use her sword on him at one point, believe it or not, but luckily Superman grabbed it mid-swing. That was a close call, Diana, a little too close for comfort. And before we continue with this list, if you want to go ahead and give us a thumbs up, that would be awesome. It really does help us out here on our channel, and then in turn we can bring you all the nerdy goodness and put it back into your eyes. Thank you so much for your support. Now let's get right back to this list. Number 8, Power Girl. In Wonder Woman issue 41, A Murder of Crows Part 2, we see Power Girl and Wonder Woman go toe-to-toe. This nightmare becomes reality when the son of Ares, the Crows, turns superheroes against Wonder Woman, including Power Girl. At the start of the comic, Wonder Woman even acknowledges that this isn't going the way she thought it was. She's getting quite a few hits from Power Girl. Now, it's fun to watch. I mean, Power Girl literally punches Diana so hard that she ends up in Canada, which is amazing. Karens are tough. She's probably the toughest Karen out there, I would say so. But Wonder Woman quickly reminds herself that she too has super speed. She's good, but she's no Amazon. Number 7, Supergirl. Hell on Earth is a Superman storyline beginning with Superman Volume 3 issue 13, and as the title suggests, Hellspawn arrives to Earth and kicks Superboy and Superman out of the Fortress of Solitude, so now they need help from the Justice League in stopping him. Hell's idea here is to go back in time and prevent the destruction of Krypton, but in order to do so, our solar system will be blown to smithereens. Nice. Hashtag not so great. Supergirl is on board with Hell's plan to, bring back Krypton, so Wonder Woman knows that she must stop her. Diana reminds her that strength is not simply about force, but rather from studying your opponent and how they fight. She continues to tell Kara that she fights like a child, wasting energy and lashing out. That's a pretty harsh burn. So Diana ties her up then with a lasso and hopes that Supergirl can learn from this. Closely matched in strength and speed, but not experience. Number 6, Batman. On screen we saw Batman and Superman go at it. It was a good time, but we have yet to see Batman fight Wonder Woman, and that's probably for the best. In Wonder Woman the Hikatia, released in 2002, during this storyline Batman gets on Diana's radar after somebody Wonder Woman was in charge of protecting turns out to be a criminal in Gotham City, so Batman has a few choice words to say. That's his city and he handles the crime around those parts. Diana disagrees, so now we get a heated exchange. Lucky for us, it's pretty epic. Batman throws a batarang and Diana catches it. It's always an entertaining dynamic when two superheroes have different plans. Now the only way for Diana to stop beating down Bruce was for Batman to tell her that she's straight up won. He surrenders, which is insane. The cover of the story is actually pretty spoilery. It shows Wonder Woman's foot on Batman's head, which we don't see play out until page 93. But it's still worth the read nonetheless. Check it out. Number 5, Mera. Returning to the Flashpoint universe for a hot minute, where Wonder Woman is now an oppressive queen of the Amazons, the way she rules over them is dark. It's cruel. It's nothing like how we know and love Diana now. So naturally her combat skills share a hint of evil as well. She's one of the two main villains in the 2013 animated film Justice League The Flashpoint Paradox, and it's here where we see Diana and Aquaman fall for each other out of nowhere. Aquaman's wife, Mera, is of course hurt during this, as she witnessed this affair go down, so she approached Wonder Woman and was like, "Hey man, not so cool what happened there with you and my husband. I don't know, let's talk about it." Wonder Woman responds by taking her head clean off. Her body was then later sent to Aquaman as a gift, and then of course a massive war began. This is incredibly dark, but most things in the Flashpoint universe are. I mean, she kept and wore Mera's crown too, like, come on, really dude? Number 4, Captain Atom. In Injustice Gods Among Us issue 2, Captain Atom is keeping Superman busy. He's holding the god down by using his nuclear energy. And he's actually doing a pretty decent job here, I'm not gonna lie. The Pentagon thinks that Nathaniel can take Superman on, but he's never tried to before until now, because he knows, he follows orders, unlike some other gods. It's a heated exchange, but it comes to an explosive halt once Diana enters the scene. Right before Captain Atom is about to punch Superman's head right off, Wonder Woman uses her sword to slash at his throat. He's standing there afterwards, but everybody knows what's about to happen. He has more power in him than 10 nuclear bombs, and her magic sword just breached the one thing that contains it. So he decides to take Superman with him as he flies off and explodes in space. Number 3, Huntress. Back to the Injustice timeline yet again. Looking into year 3, issue 21. The world is far from bright. Superman is hurt, so Huntress believes that this is the perfect time to take a crack at the son of Krypton. Batwoman is also there, so the two of them perform a well choreographed cranial kick, and down he goes. They genuinely have him on their ropes here. It's looking good, but then in comes the bestie Wonder Woman. Not on her watch, oh god. Diana explains how fighting for a lost cause doesn't make you a hero, it just makes you foolish. Huntress responds with, well, we'd rather die fools than belong to a tyrant, and then Diana makes that a reality by cracking her whip around Huntress's neck and giving a mighty tug. She got Gwen Stacy'd by Wonder Woman, guys, that's brutal. She says she didn't mean to, but at that point it's far too late, doesn't matter. Number 2, the Justice League. Perhaps one of the best victories here has to be the time Diana blindfolded herself in order to take on Medusa. Yeah, you heard me. Shut your eyes for this one, folks. This one goes down in Wonder Woman Eyes of the Gorgon, beginning in Wonder Woman Volume 2, issue 206. Diana is challenged to take on Snakehead Sally over here, so at first she blindfolds herself, obviously, but when the blindfold comes off, she needs a new plan, so she improvises and uses one of the snakes from her head that had been severed off, and she uses its venom to blind herself. That's one way of not looking. She takes down Medusa blind. It's actually really impressive, but it only gets better. A couple of issues later, Diana, still blind, begins training with the Justice League. They need to know she's still a formidable member, so like the final scene of Dodgeball, she wraps up her eyes, and so it begins. Plastic Man, The Flash, Black Canary, Martian Manhunter, even Batman comes in at one point, all racing towards her, and she takes them all on. Superman even fires a gun at her, like okay, but she deflects it, no sweat, still blind. How impressive is that? And finally coming in at number 1, the Justice League again. Another one, here you go. Yeah, it's pretty common for superheroes to think about taking down their own teammates. Batman did it in Tower of Babel. He had all these plans just in case anybody on the team went a little psycho. And then in JLA, A League of One, Diana has to face a similar situation. The story begins with a flashback to 1348, where the evil dragon Dracul Carfang has started wiping out villages. Now the only way to destroy said dragon is of course to get to its heart. How soft and lovely. Soldiers reach the dragon's lair, fail at killing it obviously, so then they just blow the entrance apart and seal it in forever until, you guessed it, today, present day. So the rules with how to defeat this dragon are complicated because it can only be taken down by members of the Justice League, but in turn it would take them out in the process. So Diana figures out this wild loophole and takes the team down herself in order to protect them. Yeah, hear me out. She traps Martian Manhunter in a volcano, she throws Aquaman to the fishes, hilariously, he gets eaten by a sea monster, and then she beats up Batman and the Flash. She also steals Green Lantern's ring, which is just rude. She handles Superman as well by sending him away on a fake mission in space, so he's just away, not even involved. And then she handles the dragon with her lasso, almost dying in the process, but you gotta do what you gotta do. Even if that includes throwing your coworker into a sea monster's trout. What can I say? That's teamwork. Teamwork makes the dream work.
And at 10, Peter Parker. With Miles having all the powers of Spider-Man with a couple extra to boot, it's bound to be expected that he would eventually surpass his idol/mentor Peter Parker. However, we expected it after some training and a lot of experience. We see this come to pass though in the pages of Spider-Man. Miles and Peter run into each other in costume and they don't know each other's identity. So Pete demands that Miles unmask himself and, state his name. However, they get into a bit of an altercation because of that. And thanks to the help of a few additions Miles made to his suit, including stingers that cause paralysis and electrification fortified webbing, Miles does end up gaining the upper hand and knocking Peter down, which I have to say shouldn't really have been the case. Like, they should have shown us that the more experienced Spider-Man could still win, since experience is the real currency of the world, but nonetheless, it happened, so it goes on the list. And at 9, Deadpool. Deadpool is such a charismatic character that you'd think he'd pair perfectly with the quick-witted, constantly quipping Webhead. However, in one episode of the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon, Peter was introduced to the one and only Wade Wilson, the merc with a red leather-covered mouth. Kinky. The fight quickly turns into Peter and Wade literally slapping each other, so it's safe to say that this is bound to be interesting. However, Deadpool somehow pulls Peter into his mind, turning the fights from a fisticuffs to Deadpool hunting a Spider-Man whale with a harpoon, a la Lewis Brinley, and getting trampled with giant animals and verbal puns that caused physical harm. Deadpool is literally a bard using vicious mockery in this scene, and I don't think that anyone can fight me on that point. Straight up, this whole episode is hilarious, and the fact that Deadpool can't say like the word kill just makes me think about YouTube censors. So it's relatable too. And at 8, Fantastic Four. In the Amazing Spider-Man issue 1, we get thrown right into the action with a crossover with the Fantastic Four. But not a fantastic crossover, since the group was actually in the midst of fighting Spider-Man. Spidey took on all 4 members at once, webbing them all up in a way that disabled their powers, including basically hog-tying Mr. Fantastic. The thing is, no pun intended, this fight was all Spider-Man's fault. He wanted to join the Fantastic Four, and figured the best way to convince them to let that happen was to infiltrate their base and kick their asses. However, he learns that joining the team won't actually make him any money, so he called them cheap and leaves, which I find utterly hilarious. He hit the Human Torch with a baseball bat made of web, for crying out loud. How is like a 5th member supposed to join the Fantastic Four? Wouldn't it be like the Fantastic Five at that point? Or like, is Ben getting kicked out? Like, he can go be somebody's pet rock, right? And at 7, Iron Man. Iron Man and Spider-Man may have a father-stepson-like bond in the MCU, however, things in the comments are much more professional than that, aside from the Iron Spider storyline, I guess. There are multiple instances of Iron Man and Spider-Man fighting and Peter coming out on top, like in Amazing Spider-Man number 536, where he had some assistance from the Venom symbiote and actually exploded the Iron Man suit from the inside out. This was during the Civil War storyline where Tony believed that heroes needed to register their secret identities to be able to continue fighting. After this, however, Spidey does join Iron Man's team and reveals his identity as a result. This then leads to the One More Day storyline that some people believe to be the story No Way Home is inspired by. However, now Spidey takes on Iron Man as Peter Parker, using his organic webbing to string him up real good. There was also the Amazing Spider-Man number 588 fight where Tony shuts down the Iron Spider suit with a voice command, but Peter had built in a counter voice command and surprises Tony, managing to web him up and flee. The counter voice command, I guess, was also surprised. So that's pretty funny. And at 6, X-Men. This is certainly another interesting number, since Spider-Man had struggled against singular X-Men before, such as Nightcrawler and Wolverine. However, in the Secret Wars storyline, he took on the whole X-Men team at once and won. In Secret Wars number 3, Spider-Man was eavesdropping on the X-Men to learn their plans. When he heard meeting with Magneto among other things, he decided to drop in and say hi. I guess his body and powers just go into overdrive when he fights teams because, just like with the Fantastic Four, Spider-Man was easily able to dodge Wolverine, Nightcrawler, and more, even though he struggled one-on-one. He really wrecked them, webbing Colossus and Nightcrawler, hanging rogue from the ceiling, and just obliterating the entire team. Even Wolverine pointed out that they were all lucky all he wanted was information and then an escape, because, quote, he really clobbered us. Halfway through and at number 5, Captain America. Within the pages of Civil War II, we expected a battle much like the last Civil War, with moral alignments being similar along with a couple deaths. However, we were shocked when a battle between heroes was interrupted. This vision that took us away from the action actually ended with an image of Miles Morales holding a dead Captain America. It seemed to be that Miles had also killed him, with blood dripping out of his hand and covering his suit. Would this really come to pass though? Civil War II was based on the belief in using the visions of an inhuman known as Ulysses to prevent disasters before they occurred, and heroes that felt taking action based on these prophecies were irresponsible, which is where this vision of Miles killing Cap came from, since these visions resulted in preventing multiple tragedies but also got War Machine and Hulk killed. But we did see an explanation play out in Secret Empire number 7, when a rage-filled Spider-Man nearly beat Captain America, who was remade by Hydra using the Cosmic Cube, to death after Cap had killed Black Widow. But that's all in the past. 5 years in the past to be exact. And at 4, Wonder Woman. Despite Marvel and DC always being viewed as rivals, they have had multiple occasions where they've had to come together. One such time was in the Superman and Spider-Man comic, which saw the two heroes join together to take on Dr. Doom. The Hulk and Wonder Woman also made an appearance in an attempt to satisfy more fans, and so we could hope that Superman and Hulk would dish it out. However, Dr. Doom very briefly got Spider-Man and Wonder Woman to fight because he said the two were enemies. And while Wonder Woman believed him, Spidey is from this universe, so he knows better than to take Dr. Doom at his word. So Diana tried to capture the bug in her net, which in this case is a giant lasso that makes you tell the truth. But Spider-Man ended up gaining the advantage by simply turning off the lights and letting his Spidey sense do the work, after dodging the lasso quite a bit, might I add. Spider-Man ended the fight by simply tapping her on her shoulder and basically saying, "See, I could kick right now, but I'm not. I'm one of the good guys." And that was enough for Diana to stand down, apparently. Getting close to the end in number 3, Hulk. Usually when Spidey fights someone stronger or more powerful than himself, he needs to think on his feet and outsmart them in some way. And you think that would be easy with the Hulk, given that he's just a giant brute with anger issues. But actually, that's not how this one played out at all. In True Believers Spider-Man vs. the Hulk number 1, Hulk challenged Spider-Man at a horrible time. At least, a horrible time for the Hulk. Since Spider-Man had just acquired a new set of abilities which increased his strength, speed, and gave him the ability to go airborne without webs. Spider-Man at this point was actually stronger than the Hulk, so he was trying to avoid a fact for lack of causing permanent damage. Unaliving him, if you will. But when Hulk started to endanger nearby kids, Spider-Man punched him and literally sent him into space. Since he was outside Earth's atmosphere, Spider-Man realized that he wasn't coming back down and flew up to help him, bringing him back down to Earth where he could breathe and not, freeze to death. It's pretty hardcore. Penultimately, in at number 2, Superboy. Marvel vs. DC is one of the best crossovers when looking at these lists. The fights from that crossover were decided by votes, so with Spider-Man being the most popular character Marvel has ever released, you can be sure that he'd end up winning against Superboy, despite the potentially unrealistic scenario that caused. However, it was explained away pretty easily when Superboy broke a water tower and flooded the roof they were fighting on. All it took after that was a conveniently placed high voltage box and some crashing to end the fight for Superboy. I don't know if Spider-Man was aware of this vulnerability, but either way, it went how it went. It also feels like I should mention that the Spider-Man fighting Superboy was Ben Reilly, the Spider-Man clone who goes on to become the Scarlet Spider. And DC fans don't seem to like it when you bring up this fight, with multiple users on a certain forum telling someone who mentioned it to jump on a bed of nails, which I have to say, I've heard better insults, come on. Finally, in at number 1, Silver Surfer. Sure, Hulk is strong and Superboy is part Kryptonian, but Silver Surfer is literally a cosmic being, a herald of Galactus. This man is nuts. And while yes, the fight with him may not really have been there overall, Spidey still technically came out on top, and that's what matters. In Silver Surfer number 14, the flying second place Emmy had a crossover encounter with Spider-Man while surfing over the city, and cause plot to make characters fight, a misunderstanding ensued. So Spidey immediately attacked the Silver Surfer. Let's be honest, on a good day, Surfer would usually just obliterate Spider-Man no problem, or just like flick him and he'd be fine. But on this occasion, the Surfer was actually already weak from a previous encounter, and on top of that, he just didn't want to fight. The Silver Surfer repeatedly tried to avoid battling Spider-Man and even saved Spidey from falling off a building, but Spider-Man wouldn't let up, knocking the Surfer off his board and taking the fight to him on the rooftops. Silver Surfer finally just got fed up with the violence and then made a decision to retreat, but first had to save a child who had taken his board. Come on, you could have at least given the kid a few minutes. Him saving the kid is what finally clued Spider-Man in that the Surfer was a good guy, but technically, Spidey wins by default. He didn't die, so that's a win to me. That's what matters. And at 10, The Flash. Now, The Flash has fought alternate versions of himself a lot, and I mean a lot. But I think that the most interesting time was when it was him from an alternate future where Wally West had died. And this future Barry's solution was to come back and kill his past self so the timeline of events that caused Wally to die wouldn't happen. Yeah, I still don't understand it either. However, to gain enough speed, Barry has to kill all of his rogues, including Gorilla Grodd, Mirror Master, and Captain Cold, who he just sits with as he dies. It's weird. I also don't get how going on a killing spree helps you gain more speed, but whatever, maybe Reverse Flash did it. He eventually does gain enough speed and runs back in time to try to kill himself. But both the present Barry and a future version of Wally West fight off future Barry, and future Barry gets killed. But before dying, he's able to mutter Thawne in an attempt to explain that Thawne killed his mother. Yeah, gotta love comics, right? They make so much sense. In at 9, Mecha Vibe. I will admit the Flash TV show has gone in some interesting directions recently. However, the most recent season saw Barry lose basically all of his emotions for a time while trying to build an artificial speed force. But this ended up causing Barry to be very logical but also weirdly impulsive, becoming a form of pseudo-villain for a couple episodes. But when choosing to take only Iris out of the Mirrorverse, the team retaliates and tries to stop him. But in the process, Barry absolutely destroys all of them because he literally can predict where a ball will appear before it's thrown. He just puts his hand up and there's a ball that will just bounce in random directions that Cisco throws, and then he doesn't move his hand and catches it. Like, what? Gotta love that speed thinking. And you know, it's not like that would have helped against DeVoe or anything. Gotta love when they introduce new abilities that would have really helped previously, huh? Oh, and that damn copyright neutral lightsaber battle in the finale, seriously? That had to be the most ridiculous bull I've ever seen on this show. Like, I thought Godspeed was gonna pull some like sick ass Zeus bull and like start like grab the lightning and like start throwing it, but no, he made a lightning saber. This show, man. And it ate Green Arrow. Okay, so during the Elseworlds crossover event, Flash and Green Arrow swapped their powers. So Oliver Queen became the Flash and Barry Allen became the Green Arrow. Yet even with that, Barry was in essence still his old self until he started having to take on a darker personality in order to be the Green Arrow. Before doing this, however, he did finally get his revenge on Oliver after around 6 years. In the very first crossover, Flash vs. Arrow, we saw Oliver training Barry on how to case an environment. He did so by placing remote control crossbows in a field and told Barry to catch an arrow. After he did, the remote control crossbows shot Barry in the back. Literally. Barry, however, got his revenge in Elseworlds where he did the same thing to Oliver on Earth 38, when training Oliver on how to use his speed. I don't know how he got the bows there, because like, I mean, it was another Earth, but it still counts. He also beat the Amazo robot after it had gained the abilities of Green Arrow among others, so that certainly counts as well. And it's 7 other Flashes. When Wally goes berserk and starts killing other speedsters, you know it's gonna be an interesting issue. Yeah, in the Future State storyline, we see some Flashes including Jay Garrick, Barry Allen, and Max Mercury fighting off various thugs with blasters, swords, and futuristic torpedo grenades. But one of the speedsters gets injured and they have to retreat. They later, for some reason, get inside each other's dreams and end up in some psychic plane of existence where Wally ends up finding them somehow. It also seems to be like a version of Wally that's also Black Flash, or like maybe it's Black Flash disguising, I don't know. Either way, this version of Wally absolutely rips through the entire Flash family, feeding on their psychic forms, and honestly, that's enough for me to put it on this list, so just because like I don't want it to happen to me. And at 6, Kid Flash. In season 3 of The Flash, Barry kinda gave up on his responsibilities because he was scared of losing Iris. Like, I get it, the girl you've been pining after for years had finally admitted that she had feelings for you, but then you went and changed the timeline, so losing her would definitely end up sucking. But you don't give all the responsibility of saving her to her little brother, that Godspeed, because you changed the timeline. Damn, season 3 was weird. However, in season 3, episode 12, Barry and Wally have a race to keep Wally's training going. Things seem fairly even until they come to a building that they need to run over. Barry faces through the wall, but since Wally doesn't know how to do that, he has to run over the building. Funny. Wally has to run over a wall. Wall. Either way, Barry ends up winning and Wally complains because he phased. But then Barry responds with the best line of, "What's my name?" Since prior he was mentioning how he was called the fastest man alive. Also, I want to just say that they were betting on this race and Caitlyn bet more on Barry than Iris did. So maybe I should have let Savitar win. Just saying. Halfway through into number 5, Black Lightning. The Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover event was probably the biggest, most influential event the Arrowverse ever had, similar to how Crisis on Infinite Earths in the comics was a really big event, with characters from shows that we didn't even know were in the Arrowverse making an appearance, like Doom Patrol, Teen Titans, and even Ezra Miller's Flash. However, one of the most highly anticipated crossovers was Black Lightning, who made his appearance after being pulled to Earth 1 by Pariah when his Earth was destroyed in part 3 of the 5-part crossover. His first meeting with the heroes was an eventful one though, attacking Vibe, Frost, and the Flash at the Antimatter Cannon, demanding that he be sent home, even though there was no home to be sent home to. After some quick descriptions about what's going on from Pariah and Barry, he calms down. But before he does, he takes a few passes at the Flash, including just throwing lightning at him, which Barry just blocks with some additional lightning. So, pretty sick if you ask me. And for Supergirl. Okay, this is the last of the Arrowverse stuff, I promise, okay? He fights a lot of people in the Arrowverse. The Invasion crossover was the first big crossover the Arrowverse had. They had a couple prior to this, but this was the first one where Supergirl was brought into Earth 1, and since the Legends were having their first season, they were also there as well. However, after discovering that Barry had changed the timeline and made a whole new reality that gave Diggle a son, and killed Cisco's brother, the group basically benched Barry when they were going to save the president from aliens. Yeah, bench the guy who can run at the speed of light. That's a great idea. So since Barry was staying, Oliver stayed back with him. But it's actually a good thing that they did, because the distress signal turned out to be a trap that everyone went to because, you know, they were trying to save the president. However, they turned against Oliver and Barry because they got brainwashed by Dominators. So in an attempt to get the Dominators out of the others' heads, Barry lured Supergirl to a warehouse where he got her really mad enough to break the connection. He got her mad by showing her how much faster he is and that she couldn't even lay a finger on him. I actually find it funny because it's such a childish thing, but it works so well. Getting close to the end in number 3, Batman. Batman is always depicted as a hero who can beat anyone despite not having any powers, and I get why it's appealing to people, because we all want to feel like we can do anything even though we're not a superhero. But the thing is, this whole Batman is the best thing is a load of bull, okay? Take this single frame from the Price storyline, where Flash puts his fist not even a centimeter away from Batman's face and says, "I could hit you 100 times before you even threw one punch." And he is absolutely right. I love this line. I love Batman being put in his place. Not only that, but as Red Death, Barry was also able to beat Batman after being blasted with positive energy. God, that sounds like the show. Barry was able to take control over his body again as Red Death, since Batman was so full of hate and whatnot. Because, you know, Red Death is a combination of Bruce Wayne and Barry when they combined after entering the Speed Force, while Barry was tied to the front of a cosmic treadmill-powered Batmobile. I'm not even kidding. It sounds absolutely ridiculous. Penultimately, in at number 2, Quicksilver. During the Marvel vs. DC crossover comic event, the Flash was pitted against Quicksilver, since he's the Marvel equivalent. However, there are multiple things about these characters that separate them. For instance, Quicksilver's body is always moving quickly, and he has to actually slow himself down in order to talk to people and live like a normal person would, which is why he comes off as short-tempered and easily annoyed, because he's literally slowing down his life for you and can't wait for you to get in the fast lane. However, the Flash and subsequently other DC speedsters only run fast when accessing the Speed Force, so otherwise they're just normal people with high metabolisms. But when pitted against each other, the Flash did understandably come out on top, because while he needs to access the Speed Force to move fast, he's accessing a literal force of nature, so yeah, it makes sense. Finally, in at number 1, Superman. The Flash beats Superman in one of the most iconic moments of all time in comics. The Flash and Superman have faced off on multiple occasions, multiple of which ended in a tie or close to it. But in the panels of Flash Rebirth number 3, we got to see how that was all possible. After all, Barry is accessing a force of nature. When Barry wanted to re-enter the Speed Force after escaping, the Justice League was looking for a way to disconnect Barry from the Speed Force to save his life. But Barry manages to break free and runs off. Superman follows him though, saying that he will find a way to save him and that they can't lose another hero, and that he won't be able to re-enter the Speed Force because he will keep up with him. That they have raced before and Superman even won a couple times. But that's when Barry looks at him super smugly and says, "Those were for charity, Clark." And then boom! The man runs insanely fast and leaves Superman in his dust. I love this moment. It settled the debate once and for all. Who's faster? The Flash, by far. I love it. Best moment in all of comics, okay? Well, I mean, after the introduction of Green Arrow's son, Connor.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Nightwing. Coming from the Court of Owls storyline, where a body was found with a message. Bruce Wayne will die tomorrow. That's what it said, written right there on the wall. Harry Potter, Chamber of Secrets style. It's so mysterious, okay. Pretty concerning warning, but when Batman finds Dick Grayson's DNA under the victim's fingernail, he has even more questions. It's later revealed that William Cobb is the great-grandfather of Dick Grayson. Spoilers right off the hop. But Batman is trying to piece together this mystery alone. He's not sharing all these details, and Dick is obviously upset. He's yelling at Bruce, he's demanding to shed more light on this fact that he just dropped on him. Bruce interrupts him with a left hook to the jaw, knocking Nightwing down. He did this simply to check one of Nightwing's teeth for an owl logo. Now, to be fair, he did have the owl in his tooth. Bruce was right. Dick was supposed to be a Talon growing up, but I'm pretty sure there's other ways to check a tooth here. I mean, you have tech that can see through cars. I don't know, just tell him to lean back. Be like, what's that? And scan his mouth. That's it. Although a surprise bat punch works too. That clearly works as well. Number 9. The Incredible Hulk. When DC and Marvel combine powers, it's an odd but beautiful time. In DC's special series issue 27 titled The Monster and the Madman, Angry Orphan Bruce vs. Angrier Orphan Bruce. Who comes out on top? Well, given the title of this list, you already know what happens, but how? That's the question. Bruce Banner was working at a division of Wayne Research. He was developing a gamma gun, said to cure diseases, so Banner was hoping he could fix his mean green problem while at work. Sounds like a plan. But when the Joker comes in and steals the gamma gun, Bruce goes green, makes a mess, and in turn, Batman shows up to save the day. You can't just punch the Hulk until he goes to sleep this time around. You won't even get close. So Batman, in fact, does get close, a little too close for comfort, as his spine was seconds away from snapping like a pencil. So Batman used a chemical that would knock the beast out. Thing is, the Hulk can hold his breath for a long time, so in order for him to inhale, Batman had to kick him right in the stomach, and then down goes the Green Goliath. And before we continue on with this list, you guys know the drill. If you want to go and give us a thumbs up, that would be awesome. It really does help us out a lot at this channel, and obviously we like throwing all that nerdy content back, so it's a nice circle of love. Hit that thumbs up. Thank you. Back to the list. Number 8. Wonder Woman. Rich orphan vs. daughter of Zeus. This one is shocking, I'll admit. Coming from Batman Confidential issue 53, Batman is facing the team, and right from the get-go, trying not to say right off the bat, he says the woman is the most powerful. Right on. The woman being Wonder Woman. He decides he has to take her down first, but after his knuckles shatter, Bruce realizes it might be a little harder than he thinks. She still needs to breathe though, so there is hope. Batman beats her without any heavy metal knight armor, anything like that, and then after he gets Superman's powers, he takes out the entire team again. All these superhumans, it's always air. It's always air that's the weakness. You just gotta knock the wind out of them and then they're good. Like every kid in the playground, when they get winded, they're like, and then have to go home. Number 7. Green Arrow. Whenever Batman breaks his one rule, it's pretty alarming. He did it a few times in the early comics. I mean, he pushed a guy into acid, he threw another guy into a knife, and then he broke a dude's neck with one kick. It was pretty intense, but nothing comes close to the time that Batman beat Green Arrow half to death just for Superman's birthday. Yeah, hear this one out. This takes place in Superman and Batman's Absolute Power storyline. It takes place in an alternate timeline where Superman and Batman were raised as evil rulers instead of the protectors that they are now. It's a stressful but pretty awesome time, I gotta admit. They're hunting down Green Arrow, and the fight, as you would guess, doesn't last too long. Archer almost gets Superman as well. He comes very close. Clark catches the arrow, and then moments later, Kryptonite explodes out of it. The classic Loki Hawkeye trick. It's good. Always works. Batman gets upset here. He says, hey, if you just hurt him, I'll kill you. So that's pretty crazy for Bruce. That's like 0 to 100 for Bruce Wayne. They brawl it out a bit, and then when Archer goes down, Bruce says, get up, because he wants more. At that point, I would my jeans. That's crazy. He's so angry. Now, this is when Superman flies in and turns Archer into dust with his laser vision. He's telling Green Arrow's corpse to obey or die, so it's very intense. Batman did all the heavy lifting here, and it's even more twisted when you remember that he gave Archer up to Superman as a birthday present. Number 6. The Ninja Turtles. Batman beating up the Foot Clan and coming face to face with Shredder is pretty awesome. But when he meets the Turtles, he has no idea what exactly he's facing. He's like, are these good guys or bad guys? I'm very confused. All he sees are giant moody turtle monsters with weapons, just like eating pizza. So of course, a brawl goes down. It also doesn't help that the Turtles were breaking and entering into a pizza joint. Like, you're literally breaking the law. You're a bad guy. Batman thinks these guys are villains, so he takes them on all at the same time. He impressed the Turtles while doing so, and it takes Master Splinter's arrival just to calm things down. But even then, Batman's like, a rat? No sweat, I'll fight you too. Batman vs. Ratman, let's do it. He doesn't beat up Splinter, don't worry, because Splinter makes a run for it, which is crazy. The fact that Splinter and the Turtles had to run away from Bruce Wayne, that's awesome. We had to include it on this list. Until next time, Batman, just eating pizza. Number 5, The Punisher. I would pay thousands of dollars to see this on screen. No problem, debit, boop. Punisher Batman Deadly Nights, written by Chuck Dixon. We get to see John Romita Jr. draw Batman during his 37 years at Marvel Comics, which is amazing. So both of these heroes were on the same side, more or less. They wanted bad guys off the street, but the way that Frank Castle does that, by spraying, a plethora of bullets, Batman likes to break an arm or two, so they're a little bit different. So they get into a disagreement over Batman's one rule, and Frank is moments away from taking out the Joker, and then Batman intervenes and saves the Joker's life, which is kind of crazy. Batman lets Frank connect one hit to the face because he was frustrated, but one is all he'll get tonight. Number 4. Superman. One of the biggest movies of 2016. It's been teased since I Am Legend in the very background. Batman vs Superman, Son of Krypton vs Bat of Gotham. Who will come out on top? Well, the general audience wasn't a big fan of this outcome, but Bruce Wayne took this one. Bruce almost ended the God too, but luckily he was reminded of his mother and therefore his own mortality, so he didn't go through with that execution. In Batman vs Superman, I mean, sure, Bruce had kryptonite, but Superman easily could have punched him into vapor. I wasn't too happy with this win, but after accumulating over $870 million in the box office, we figured it was worth a Martha mention. In the comics too, Batman has come out on top. In Injustice Year 5, Batman beats Superman in a back alley, and of course in The Dark Knight Returns, Bruce gets pretty close to ending the Son of Krypton. Number 3. Azrael. Right after the 1993 Nightfall storyline when Batman got wrecked by Bane, his back was broken. He decided to pass the Batman mantle to not Dick Grayson, no, instead he chose Jean-Paul Valley, aka Azrael. This guy is a crazy substitute. I mean, his run as Batman wasn't the same at all. Batman wasn't nearly as violent as Azrael. He's also just messy and irresponsible the way he handles things. Not really a great look for Gotham, but we have to admit he is a tad impressive because he did beat Bane with his, advanced Autobot looking suit. So he did a good job on paper. He was a decent successor, but not a permanent one. Once Bruce recovered, he had to physically force Azbat to leave the position. He got too cozy in the crime fighting life, but you know what? I don't blame him. But yeah, as far as being Batman, even the style changes were drastic. He had claws. I don't know, I'm not a big fan of claws. If someone was saving my life from a crime and he had claws looking like that, I would think I'm in more trouble. Number 2. Green Lantern. This one comes from Justice League issue 5. Fans refer to it simply as the Punch. At this time in comics, Batman was about to become the leader of the Justice League International, and Guy Gardner doesn't really share the same enthusiasm as the rest of the team. For more than one issue, he makes it very clear that he doesn't want Batman to run the show, although Batman was clearly a better fit for the role. Whatever, people get jealous. Guy was being sour, he was being a sour guy, so he challenged Batman to a fight without the use of his power ring. Just one human to another. Batman was already a human before, so it's gonna get messy. Batman easily knocked him down, and you guessed it, he did so with one punch. Yeah, of course, he's Batman, and without the ring, you're literally just a guy. Literally a guy. Blue Beetle started shouting one punch over and over again. He was hyped up, and readers were for sure doing the same. I know I was. And finally, number 1, the Justice League. One of the more impressive defeats comes from the Tower of Babel storyline that began back in JLA issue 43. It's a 4-parter written by Mark Waid, where Ra's al Ghul and the League of Assassins strike against every member of the Justice League using their personal lives and vulnerabilities. How does one get all this information? Well, it's all thanks to Batman and his trust issues. See, Bruce was keeping a hidden file that exposed all the strengths and weaknesses of the JLA. He made this file just in case any of them were to go rogue. So this man just gave away revenge recipes. Here you go, here's the password, enjoy. Batman figured all these out, so he wrote them down. Okay, so red kryptonite to use on Superman, okay? Nanites to trap Wonder Woman in a virtual battle with herself. A post-hypnotic suggestion would make the Green Lantern will himself into blindness. He has a Vibra bullet as well that would send the Flash into light speed seizures, and a magnesium virus would cause Martian Manhunter's skin to burst into flames when he's exposed to air. Also, Scarecrow's fear toxin would make Aquaman afraid of water, and Plastic Man, well, you just freeze him and flick him. Some blame Ra's al Ghul, but I blame the guy who had a dirty file of secrets. I don't know. I don't trust rich orphans anymore. That's my thing. I'm for sure going through all my friends' phones now.
Coming in number 10, we've got Wolverine. Say it isn't so. The Hulk and Wolverine never would fight. They're both so friendly and easy to get along with. I almost had you for a second, didn't I? Now, these two are almost contractually obliged to duke it out from time to time now, aren't they? Going way back to the era before Wolverine was even an official X-Men, this duo would fight over just about anything, and it really could go either way. Like, Wolverine has beaten the Hulk before, albeit in the grim dark universe of Old Man Logan, but in most cases, James Howlett loses out to the Hulk. Sure, he's technically invincible and will always bounce back in one way or another, most of the time. There's no dealing with brute force that the Hulk has to offer. Way back before Wolverine was even introduced in X-Men, the two fought with the Hulk refusing to back down. Then there's the time that the Hulk returned from space looking to exact some revenge on those who would send him out there. Wolverine definitely had his butt kicked this time in particular. And who could forget the legendary rip and tear fest that was Hulk versus Wolverine atop a mountain in Tibet. God, Hulk really let him have it that time, didn't he? Limbs were removed and tossed to different mountaintops, and legs were threatened to be eaten. Not a good look for our pal Wolverine now, is it? But what can you do? Beating the Hulk isn't something most folks even have a chance at. Coming at number 9, we've got Spider-Man. A cursory Google search will reward you with a plethora of insane clickbait homebrew animations, pitting Spider-Man against the Hulk in the lowest resolution possible. Ah, the internet. Is there no end to your ridiculous cash grabs? Remember the era of Spider-Man Elsa videos? What a time to be alive. However, the bouts between Spider-Man and Hulk don't end at cheesy animations and gaming channels. There are indeed a few fights between the two in official Marvel stories. Cool, popular, and versatile as Spider-Man is, there really isn't a way for him to beat the Brute in head-to-head combat. He's got super strength and spidey senses, but that's not enough to take out a towering monster of flesh and gamma radiation. He's used his smarts to great effect in the past, putting other heroes' technology and strategies to use and defeating overpowered opponents. There are instances of Spider-Man outmaneuvering Hulk too. And there was also the time that he had some godly cosmic powers, but that's not exactly fair, is it? However, in the end, our green pal will likely come out on top of any fight between these two. Most times, Spidey would be best just to hide out until the Hulk leads. If he's less lucky, he'll get walloped and pass out, which has happened a couple times. The Hulk is pretty strong. Coming at number 8, we've got Iron Man. Wait, aren't these guys both founding Avengers? Why would they ever have to fight? Well, that's the thing, there's always a reason or two. They've got big, science-centered brains and plenty of power for sure. However, Tony Stark tends to get on people's nerves and also makes a bunch of decisions without consulting others. The Hulk does not take well to this, not one bit. So of course the guy with the craziest technology is going to have to take on the sheer physical might of a creature that thrives on anger. It's just gotta happen. And fight they do, but here's the thing. It's not often that Iron Man scores a decisive victory or even a victory at all. No matter how powerful and advanced he makes his weaponry, no matter how far ahead he plans to fight the Hulk, he comes with some inherent limits. His tech will eventually run out of juice, get damaged, or reach a predetermined limit. You can't really make stuff push too far past the limits of the materials it's made of. Hulk, on the other hand, will always be getting angrier and therefore stronger. He's like a perpetual motion machine of rage and fury. So even with the Hulkbuster suits, darts to sap strength, and a bevy of other interesting anti-Hulk technology, eventually this will all run out, leaving the Hulk to do what he will. It's happened time and time again, muscle beats machinery in this case. There's that time that Stark sent Hulk off into the universe, I guess, but that resulted in World War Hulk, which wasn't very fun for anyone on planet Earth. Whoops. Coming in at number 7, She-Hulk. Speaking of World War Hulk, funny how that works, right? One would think that Hulk loves his cousin too much to fight her. They have a long, strong history together, essentially treating each other as siblings, and don't often get mad, with each other anyways, despite the anger inherent in their powers. Hell, Bruce Banner is the reason that She-Hulk is the way she is. After an emergency blood transfusion, Jennifer Walters is endowed with a less intense version of Bruce Banner's condition, like a watered down Hulk. Still plenty powerful and possibly the strongest woman in Marvel, but she's not quite a match for Bruce's monster. However, like I was saying before, why would they ever fight? They're family. Well, World War Hulk changed the way the Hulk saw the world. Totally fueled by anger and revenge, he came back to Earth a changed being. And coming across his cousin, he felt no remorse in slamming her so hard into the ground that the Earth around her was turned into a crater. Holy smokes, Hulk, no mercy, eh? Coming in number 6, we've got Loki. I feel like this moment cemented the Avengers as the premier attraction in Marvel's budding cinematic universe. Back before we had any confirmation of Infinity Stones or gauntlets, we had the Tesseract. Loki, god of mischief and brother to the mighty Thor, used this object to cause all sorts of mayhem. This wasn't his only trick, but it worked particularly well. Being a god, Loki was pretty cocky though. What could Earth's heroes do to stop me, he thought. Well, the Hulk had something to say about that. He tossed the so-called puny god around like a child with a doll having a temper tantrum. Got some chuckles, inspired some memes, the works. However, this little fight had been hotly contested. Loki, again, a literal god, likely wouldn't have been hurt by this interaction at all. Like, would the Hulk have even had an effect on him? Stranger things have happened for sure. This moment might have just been played for laughs to ensure an audience hit, but hey, Hulk did indeed beat the snot out of Loki in this particular instance. Coming in number 5, we've got The Thing. Strong arm versus strong arm. A classic trope, a legendary fight. Other than Wolverine, I'd say The Thing is one of the Hulk's most lasting hero opponents. Both considered immortal, unbeatable, impossible to damage, this is a heavyweight bout like no other. However, the Hulk definitely takes precedence when he's in revenge mode. So when he wanted to go and find and fight the Avengers, the Fantastic Four stepped in. Benjamin Grimm wanted a piece of the gamma-saturated super, so the two decided to throw down on their own. After an exchange of massive blows, eventually the Thing did drop. It's gotta hurt fighting the Hulk, but at least he can take a hit. Coming in number 4, the Avengers. Yes, all of them. That's the thing, this seems to happen quite often. Nobody really knows how to deal with the Hulk, and this is an issue that rears its ugly head quite often. Even though he is often part of the group himself, if things go a little sideways, it's not unlike the Hulk to decide to go solo after working out some frustration. And by working out frustration, I do mean slapping his former comrades around. He can do that no problem too, the Hulk is strong. Why else would Tony Stark constantly be dreaming up contingency plans related to the bulky boy? But yeah, the Avengers don't often beat Hulk if they have to take him on. Usually it's making him turn back into Bruce Banner or getting him as far away from the fight as possible, and when that doesn't work, the Hulk beats folks down and leaves. Simple as that. Coming in number 3, we've got Doctor Strange. You would think that the Sorcerer Supreme would be able to deal with a meathead no problem, a spell or two and the problem's done with. However, again, during World War Hulk, the rage proved to be a little too much. Holy moly Hulk, calm down why don't ya? Strange often sends Hulk to different dimensions or far away if it looks like things are getting too rough. In this fight, he decides to channel a universe-destroying demon to give him that upper hand. It seems to be working at first, but as is the case with many fights involving last-ditch efforts against the Hulk, the new powers can only last so long. When Strange starts to lose control of this demonic power, the Hulk is just getting angrier, and when Hulk gets mad, he gets strong. With this in mind, I'm sure you can guess what happens next. Doctor Strange, unconscious. Coming in number 2, we've got the Silver Surfer. No, not Silver Surfer, Herald of Galactus, wielder of powers beyond mortal understanding. But it's true, Hulk did indeed take out this incredible hero. Although it was under some very unique circumstances. Some very zombie circumstances, in fact. Showing up just in time to see the world totally gripped by the zombie apocalypse, he does his best to help out. The number of heroes attempting to eat him proves to be too much though, and he's overwhelmed before the Hulk arrives. Using his massive size and strength to push through the crowd, Hulk consumes Silver Surfer, gaining a bit of his power cosmic along the way. Yikes. And finally at number 1, we've got Sentry. Sentry should be Earth's strongest warrior. After being imbued with the powers of a super soldier serum hundreds of thousands of times stronger than the original, he became incredibly powerful. Almost too powerful if you ask me. Thing is, this kind of strength is only barely enough to handle the Hulk. When the Hulk and his Warbound came to Earth, Sentry was there to fight him. However, they essentially fought each other to a standstill, with each reverting back to their human form. But even after all that, Bruce Banner gets the last hit in. Classic. Fighting till the very end. Sheesh. Who would have guessed that Hulk had the capacity to end all sorts of other superheroes? You gotta wonder how all these uber people feel when faced with a being so clearly stronger than themselves.